If someone's not growing, then there's a checklist. Are you getting enough sleep? If so, are you getting enough nutrition? If so, are you getting enough stimulus? Are you getting too much training stimulus? Assuming your hormones are in proper alignment, then assuming your primary anabolic is something safe and clean, you would escalate the to drive stimulus. So it's the last option, but that's how you would push past a plateau, especially if that plateau is due to genetic limitations.
It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, we're back with another episode of Table Talk. My guest again is Dr. Todd Lee. He was on episode 257, so go watch that because we're not going to repeat a lot of what we spoke about. We'll kind of build off of that. A couple things I realized, actually there are going to be three because we were talking before this, that I realized as we were having the last podcast is I didn't have the ability to go as deep in the weeds with the PEDs, and I didn't know shit about metal.
Oh, man.
So I cheated, and I brought in Tom.
Don't admit you don't know metal.
I know. And then the other one was, there was a point in the podcast where we were talking, and it was pretty deep in the podcast, and you basically said, because there was some context there that people missed, that the answer is just to take more.
I know that was part of an algorithm where it wasn't observed that it was an algorithm because I didn't explain it as the algorithm.
Yeah.
So do you want to start with that?
Yes, let's start with that.
Starting with that. So if someone's not growing, then there's a checklist. It's like, are you getting enough sleep? If so, are you getting enough nutrition? If so, are you getting enough stimulus?
Training.
Are you getting too much training stimulus? Mm-hmm. And then assuming your hormones are in proper alignment, like you've got the proper HRT dose of testosterone and GH, then assuming your primary anabolic is something safe and clean, like Masteron, you would escalate the Masteron to drive stimulus because everything else is right. So it's the last option, but that's how you would push past a plateau, especially if that plateau is due to genetic limitations.
Well, that's a big difference, but something that I find with just the PED conversations in general is a lot of people listen to it with a bias in their head, and they're just looking to validate what they want to do. Right.
And I was explaining this to the last guys who were walking out when I walked in is the reason people are so mad at me is because they've been doing it a certain way for so long. And I come along and say, this is the right way and it's the only right way. So they're pissed because if they accept that as true, that means they have to accept what they're doing is wrong. So it's easier to say, to discredit me, because if they can discredit me, then the things I say have no credibility, and then they don't have to listen.
But that's interesting, though, because that means that it tells a lot about that person in general. For instance, if we were to talk about a topic that can be polarizing, abortion, right? And we have opposing views. We should be able to sit down and talk about those opposing views and understand each other and then shake each other's hand afterwards, because I can take my lens, my eyes off and look through your eyes.
Right.
You see, so it's the same situation there where they can't take their eyes off, their glasses off to look through the lens of somebody else. It's actually a doctor, by the way. And you see what I'm saying? So we see that across, but what that tells me is that person there is so locked into their own bias that they're probably never going to change.
Well, it's an age thing. A lot of it's age and maturity. And I'll run into that so when I used to practice, I'd run into that with 7-year-old doctors. If I'm doing nutritional support for a patient and I'm getting their cholesterol down, they're mad and they say, you shouldn't write diets, you're not qualified. And it's like, what do you mean I'm not qualified? And it's like, I got a biochemistry degree and I'm a bodybuilder. And it's like, yeah, but you're not a registered dietitian. They're a registered dietitian. I'm like, you mean the 300-pound woman? It's like, what the fuck does she know about dieting?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's retarded. And so for him to accept that I was right would mean that he was wrong, which means that for 50 years, he's been practicing medicine wrong. He can't accept that because then his whole self-worth is tied into the fact that his life was dedicated to helping his patients. So if he wasn't helping them, or he wasn't helping them very well, that means he has no self-worth. So he needs to protect that self-worth, which means he has to destroy me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how these people are, is that they're married to what worked for them. And because it worked for them and they don't have the ability to shift their perspective to other points of view, then they're not going to acknowledge that what worked for them might work for them and not other people. Or worse, it wasn't optimal. It was acceptable. Or that they're responsible for the consequences of their drug use and that it wasn't genetics or fate. That had they done it differently, they would have gotten better results and less side effects.
Mm-hmm.
In this context, do you think you could technically, though, question how determined or all in those individuals are? Because let's say I come to you having looked at anything, but let's say PED is a certain way and I've hit a ceiling. I have my bias, sure. And then you come at me and you say, actually, you're doing everything wrong. Well, I've reached a certain level, supposedly doing everything wrong. What is the upper ceiling if I now do things right?
Right.
I should be like, fuck, please tell me more.
Right. It's an opportunity to
get
better.
Yeah. So I would then question that person. Do you really want to get better or do you just want to think you're correct? Because those are different things, right?
Yeah, that's totally different. It's totally different. But also, a lot of people don't understand. When I talk to a camera, I'm talking to the camera the way I talk to myself. I'm not going to talk to a person that way unless they stutter. When fucking people stutter, it kills me. I can't fucking stand people who stutter. Or when they talk like this, really slow. Like, motherfucker, if I'm talking to you, I feel like I'm in traffic, I want to strangle you. It's like, I'm like, Ben Shapiro is the speed I want to hear. So fucking spit it out, get to the point, and then we'll pick it apart afterward. But I try to be as polite and as sensitive as possible when I'm talking to an individual. But when I'm talking to a camera, I'm talking to it as harshly as I talk to myself.
Well, and you're speaking to a large number of people on camera.
Right.
So it's not an individual.
But it's not like I'm talking to an audience, though. Talking into a microphone in front of a crowd is completely different than sitting in your room in your underwear. You know, like oh, I got to shoot a video. Fuck, it's like 8 a.m. All right, and you throw a T-shirt on and a hat. And you sit down and you're like, and like, oh shit, it's been 40 minutes. Hopefully they cut a lot of that stuff out, and they don't. You know, just like all of that stuff. You just laid waste to like 400,000 people. It's like, I hate this group, and I hate this group, and I hate this group. And it's like, oh, that was not what I wanted to communicate. But it's what came out. And then the worst parts are what the Instagram reels. So the Instagram community sees me at my absolute most dickish. And then the YouTube community sees me like kind of like a tamer version.
True. We'll make sure we cut this podcast into the most polarizing parts of you humanly possible.
That could kind of be a good thing, though.
Gets traffic.
Well, that's the thing, is as long as it sucks them in and then they watch the whole thing, then pissing them off right off the bat doesn't matter. But if they get so turned off by the reel, they never listen to the whole story.
Yeah.
Then you made an enemy out of a stranger. Because the world's full of friends you haven't made friends with yet. And I'm making enemies. I'm making more friends than enemies, but I'm still making a lot of enemies, which that's not the goal. The goal isn't to alienate people. But I'm just so insensitive that I do piss people off. Whoa.
If we go back to that context of where more drugs is better, caveat, right? And you've laid out that kind of 4-step process where is it sleep? Is it nutrition? Is it training? As the Joe Blogs trainer who is trying to do this process correctly, how do we go about assessing the sleep, the diet, and the training so we can actually tick those boxes and say, you know what, I'm fairly certain that more drugs is the next step as opposed to any of those other variables that you're talking about? All
right, so the sleep. If you're getting 8 hours of sleep and you're waking up before your alarm and you feel rested, the sleep's optimal. If the sleep's not optimal, I have a sleep video on my YouTube channel, which I talk about the sleep hygiene. And I actually show my bed and my bedside and show how much effort I put into getting sleep, which is fucking insane. Like, the fact that I have tinfoil over my windows is enough to make people consider me crazy. That's like level 1. It's like there's 7 levels of crazy beyond that tinfoil on the windows. Then,
can you list just a couple? Because I'm really curious now.
All right, so I wear an eye mask.
Yep.
All right, I have a speaker, a Bluetooth speaker, set up to one different phone. It's a dedicated phone just to thunderstorms. And then it's on a live thunderstorm from Danny Lewis. I like his thunderstorms more than other people's thunderstorms. It has to be Danny Lewis's thunderstorms. It's like, and then there's the CPAP machine, right? And then I've got an air filtration device right where the intake is of the CPAP machine. So that it's cleaning the air before it goes in the CPAP machine. And then it's got a space heater so that I can regulate the temperature of the air in the CPAP. On the other side of the bed, I've got my air conditioning window mount. So I can exactly modulate the exact temperature of the room because I've got an upper limit on one machine and a lower limit on the other machine. Then next to me, I've got Tums. I've got melatonin. And that's just like a tip of the iceberg. What else is there? I've got sound, light, airflow, temperature covered. That's, I think, like 4 or 5 of them. There's other things I'm forgetting. But
the tinfoil is there primarily for light, not anything else, like
it's
radio waves or whatever it might be.
You have a mask on. You have a mask on.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I want triple redundancy. That's how you succeed, right? You don't bring one battery for your night vision goggles. You bring 2 batteries for your night vision goggles, plus the one that's in there.
Sure.
Right? So it's one of those things where I want to have triple redundancy on everything. So I have backup phone. And then that way in the middle of the night, I can reach over and like if as soon as the speaker cuts out, I can then just toggle the phone over to its own speaker so that I don't fully wake up. Because once you're up for 4 minutes, you're up.
Yeah.
So you get 4 minutes to deal with whatever the problem is. And then if any light enters your eyes, your cortisol goes up, you're up.
So what happens if you got to wake up to take a piss?
I do all the time, and I've got 4 minutes. I've got 4 minutes or less to piss.
So is there a bucket in the corner of the room?
No, it's right across the other side of the room. And then what I do is I get up and I hit the ultraviolet filtration on the air filtration device so that there's a small blue light right next to the bed. So I have and it casts enough light in the room, I can see my way over to the toilet, pee, and then make it back and then hit the button to turn off that light and get back in. But it's not enough light to where it's actually going to wake me up.
Any infrared light and things like that in your bedroom at night, or haven't gone to that extent?
I haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay, so there's more rabbit holes.
There probably is. There's probably getting people in the comments who are like, what a stupid asshole. He calls himself a doctor. He doesn't know about the 572nd wavelength. And,
But some people might look at it and go, oh, wow, okay, but like, how is your sleep for doing all that? And when you travel, saying you can't take that stuff with you, what's the difference?
I haven't slept in like 2 days. So I did like 70 milligrams of melatonin last night just so I'd be wide-eyed bushtail for this. Didn't work. So I had to use a prototype of energy drink that I'm designing.
Okay.
To wake up for this. And I didn't want to take too much. I took a half a scoop, and I think I'm pretty hyper right now.
Sure.
But I don't normally use caffeine. It's been like 3 years. But this was important, so that's why I did do it.
What would your daily dose of melatonin be just for sleep quality?
0.
So you have it. You said you had it by the bed though.
I do.
Is that like in case then?
If it's coming to me more than 4 minutes, and I'm like, oh shit, I got to time it right, because the cortisol and the light makes the melatonin secretion from pineal gland go down. So I can front load it with this sublingual dissolvable melatonin tablets, so I can spike my blood levels of melatonin, so that as one thing's coming down, the graph's going up. Sure. And I can knock myself out after the 5-6 minute mark.
Sure. Is that a mistake a lot of people make, taking it kind of too close to their bedtime, whereas they need that kind of bleed-in time, especially if they're taking like oral as opposed to sublingual?
So that's the thing, is administration time. Ella, Scientific Snitch on Instagram, she has this thing up where you're supposed to do it an hour before, but I haven't discussed with her whether or not it is sublingual or oral that she's talking about, because administration matters.
Sure.
And so that's why I'm just doing what I've done, and it usually works. So the other things you can do before sleep is GABA. That's strong as fuck. So I try to only use that as a last resort too. Magnesium. 800 milligrams of bisglycinate is the one I use. So I'll use ashwagandha, either 600 or 1200 milligrams. And that's basically, I'm trying to cover all my bases. Because let's say you're using Nandrolone. So you're blocking the cortisol receptors. So that means there's going to be free-floating cortisol, which means that you're going to have more agitation. So that means you're going to have something like ashwagandha in there to cancel out. So like when you use certain drugs like Nandrolone, even if you're using a baby dose, you're still going to have to use something to block out the cortisol. Because yes, you do have cortisol blockers, but then that has more free form cortisol. You're blocking the cortisol from binding the muscles. But is it equally binding all tissue types? or is it just muscular?
Sure.
So
this is a little bit of a tangent, and I apologize.
Yeah.
But since you mentioned kind of free flow of floating cortisol and it only being blocked in certain tissues, is this somewhere you find where a lot of people go wrong with post-cycle? As in, on cycle, cortisol might be high because you're dieting or whatever, or your body is putting out extra cortisol to try and balance the androgens, for want of a better way of putting it. And then they come off their cycle and they're like, okay, well, I can't get jacked anymore, so I may as well cut down my calories, cut down my carbs. I'm going to train more because I'm worried about losing my gains. And then you get this perfect storm where now they're not blocking that extra cortisol anymore, and the calories have come down, and the training volume's gone up, and then they're like, oh, I lost some of my gains. Can you just dive into that a little bit, because that's so common?
Can we circle back? I want to address the other things.
Sorry.
So the nutrition thing, because we're talking about the checklist as to whether you get the green light to increase your Masteron. So like the nutrition stuff that's going to tie into that is like, are you at a calorie neutrality at the very least? So like me and Ella did a video, advanced discussion, autopsy of bulking, where she pretty much, something I played with the idea for years, and I noticed it myself, but she pretty much murdered the whole calorie surplus thing, murdered it dead. And there's people who still fight against her, but it's fucking funny. It's just pathetic when they try. But it's the idea is, if you are eating at least calorie neutral, you've got enough nutrition pretty much to grow. Justin Harris talks about this, that if you actually broke it down, it's like 20 grams of extra protein a day wouldn't turn into 10, would be like 20 pounds of muscle a year. It's an absurd amount of how much, people are eating hundreds of extra grams of protein, eating hundreds or thousands of extra calories to generate what the most you're going to get is maybe 3 to 5 pounds of muscle a year. So it's absurd how much people are overdoing it with the calories. If you can only gain 1 pound a month, and you can't even grow that, but even if you could only grow 1 pound a month, that's only 100 calories a day. That's only like 25 extra grams of protein, right? So like, there's no reason to go super excessive with the calories. So as long as your weight's stable, then you're fine. And then as far as training stimulus, if you're getting a pump when you're training that muscle, that doesn't mean you have to, but if you are, pretty good indication you've stimulated that muscle. If I'm doing bicep curls and I'm getting an anterior delt and forearm pump, but not a bicep pump, that might not be the right exercise for me. But if I'm getting a bicep pump, the biceps are getting stimulated. If you're slightly sore the next day, you slightly overtrained it. Because you did damage, and now your immune system has to repair that damage with inflammation. So you definitely did something if you're inflamed from it. So you want to scratch the surface. You want to stimulate it. You know, what's stimulate, not annihilate was Lee Haney's thing. So we want, if 6 sets is 1 set too many, you could do 5. And then come back 48 hours later and do 5 more. And then come back 48 hours later and do 5 more. So if you do that, which is kind of like an Israel model, you know, and so that's what I mean. If you've got your bases covered, you're getting good enough sleep, you're getting at least calorie neutrality, you're getting at least the appropriate amount of protein, you're getting at least, you're stimulating the muscle as frequently as possible and not overtraining it, but you're at least stimulating enough to where you got to pump it, and you know that you're exactly 1 set under too many. So I think Israel's idea is that if MRV is maximum recoverable volume, and then MEV is maximum effective volume, then MAV, maximum adaptive volume, is not right under MRV, it's right above MEV. So it's, if 4 sets is enough and you can handle 18 sets, the right amount might be 5 sets every 48 hours.
AG1's next gen is now one of the most clinically backed greens powder. They went above and beyond the industry standard in testing and have made a great product even better. I've been using AG1 now for several years. Because of this, I'm very excited to be partnering with them. AG1 Next Gen is now clinically backed with an advanced formula, more probiotics, and a boatload of vitamins and minerals to help support overall health and fill key nutrient gaps. It's still the same daily habit, just 1 scoop or a travel pack and you're done. Simple. Subscribe today and try AG1 Next Gen. If you use my link, you'll also get a free bottle of AG D3K2 and an AG1 welcome kit and 5 of the updated AG1 travel packs with your first order. Head over to drinkag1.com/Dave Tate to get started and start noticing the benefits for yourself. That's drinkag1.com/Dave Tate.
Sure.
So if you got all that shit knocked out and you're still not growing, and your blood work says your test is at 1500, your IGF-1 is at 300, and you're still not growing, then adding a little bit of Masteron, maybe 10 to 20 milligrams a day, would probably push you over the edge.
In that context there, so first off, that video about TDE maintenance, whatever, can you just talk about that a little bit? Because that is being, should we say, misconstrued by people where they see maintenance as the amount it takes to maintain their body weight, but it's not really as simple as that, or the way that you and your colleague or whoever were explaining it in the video, it's a little bit more complicated than that.
I think everyone wants to win on that battle, but the war is waged somewhere else. So her whole point is, science bullshit aside, even though that's what she does, science is, if your fat level's the same, you're at maintenance, because fat is reserve energy. If your fat level's going down, you're not at maintenance, you're at a deficit. If your fat level's going up, you're at a surplus. So judging your progress based on fat, as long as your fat's neutral, then that means you are not gaining any fat. So if your lifts are progressing in the gym, but your fat level's neither going down nor up, you're at maintenance. So the old way of thinking was maintenance was body weight, but body weight's a shitty way of measuring something because it's mostly water and sodium that changes. And true, we have no accurate way to measure body fat. But if you look over a span of 6 months and your conditioning's the same, that's what matters. Is if you put on 20 pounds on your bench press, 40 pounds on this row, 40 pounds on squat, and you've been lifting the same program for 6 months and you've been lifting 10 years, if you're making that much gains, it ain't neuromuscular adaptation. It's got to be muscle, and you probably look bigger. So that's what the whole context is. It isn't for people who are competitive bodybuilders, because competitive bodybuilders are going to want to put some fat back on after the show. But when it comes to the vast majority of people, and I think most of her audience, it's regular people who are not competitive bodybuilders. They just want to permabulk. And so rather than permabulking, main gaining, like Greg Doucette says, which is a healthier way of approaching it. People are concerned that maybe this isn't the fastest way to do it. Maybe it's not. But if you're bulking for 8 months and then you have to cut for 6 months, then after that 14 months, are you really further ahead than the person who just main gained for 14 months? No. It's the tortoise versus the hare. The hare has to take rests, and the tortoise can keep going. Bodybuilding is a sport of the tortoise, not the hare. And then additionally, when you go into a calorie surplus and you're growing fat, you're not just getting hypertrophy of the fat cells, you're getting hyperplasia of the fat cells. So you're getting more fat cells. And then your leptin amount is dependent off of how many fat cells you have, not and how full they are. So it means each iteration of bulking and cutting, your appetite's going to permanently go up and up and up. Your set point is going to go up and up and up because you're putting on fat cells that you don't want to put on. It's not an optimal way of doing it. Even if you, and she even says, something I figured out too, is if 100 calories a day is enough of a surplus and you feel like, what if I'm underestimating it? Go 200 calories a day. Then you'll gain 2 pounds a month as opposed to 1 pound a month. There's no fucking way you're getting 2 pounds of muscle a month continuously. So it means you're guaranteeing you're gaining 1 pound of fat a month. So if that makes you feel more comfortable, because you know for sure you have a surplus of calories because you're gaining a half a pound a week and it's easier to track that way, that's fine. But that's how many more weeks are you going to have to cut before a show? And the longer that prep phase, the more grueling it is, the bigger the deficit, the more muscle you're going to lose. So are you really gaining more muscle? No.
In that context as well, do you think there's a misconception as well about what maintenance means? And by that, I mean, we all take into account like step count or, how many calories you burn in the gym. But if we look at maintenance as the energy it takes to cover the activity you're doing, but also recover from the activity you're doing, in theory, maintenance calories would also cover the recovery process, right?
And I think what a lot of these science guys are doing is they're not accounting the calories it took to grow the tissue into TDEE. And that's where and if you read the comments on those videos, because I think one of those videos has 240,000 views, and there's thousands of comments in there. If you actually read through the comments, and she can't fight all those fights, so I'll jump in there once in a while. And it's like, then she's got better shit to do. I don't have better shit to do. I'll fight all day. But so it's like, I'll get in there. And the thing is it's the semantics over how they define TDEE. And so they're like, well, it says so in my textbook. I was like, guess what, dude? The textbook was written by a dude. God didn't write your fucking textbook. And one day she's going to have a PhD and she's going to be writing the fucking textbooks. So that's whatever she says is kind of, I'm not saying whatever she says goes, but these are men who write now ladies who write the textbooks. They're not gods. And it doesn't mean the shit in there is right.
True. Well, at some point, it also said that leeches cured everything as well, right?
What's funny you brought that up is how many motherfuckers do I have to tell not to get their blood drawn? They're like, oh, my doctor says my hematocrit's high. I've got to get my blood drawn. I was like, did he use leeches? They're like, no. I was like, how fucking stupid is that? And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, think it through. Why the fuck would your body make more red blood cells if it didn't want them? It's like, well, it's supposed to cause strokes. It's like, it's supposed to cause strokes in 70-year-old men. Are you 70 years old? No. I was like, they're regressing. They're taking data and they're supposing the mechanism that caused those events. Like, of the stroke people, they had a correlation. Doesn't mean there's causation. Like, do people in Denver give their blood? No. What do you mean? It's like, well, it's got less oxygen in Denver. So I bet in Denver they've got more red blood cells on average.
So what you're saying is that all of these things come with context that people like to ignore.
Or they just don't think that deep about it.
Yeah,
they just think because it's written down, it's true. It's like, just because it's written down doesn't mean shit. It's like, so-and-so is smart. He wrote a book. It's like, I could write a book.
Well,
Like,
if they give blood, won't that super compensate and bring it even higher?
It does. It does. So the correct thing to do is, if your blood's thick, drink more fucking water. It's like, well, I just pee more. I'm like, well, take more salt. And it's like, well, that's going to make my blood pressure go up. It was, will it? Like, that's what you were told, but that was all based on data from people with kidney failure.
Yeah.
That if you use sea salt with water and you get the ratios right, I've got in my hydration video, I think it's How to Grow episode 11. It has the formulas on exactly how to get in enough water and sodium. And I have like a system. Where's my shit? Boom. 45 ounces, right? So you have, let's say, 4 of these would be 180. No, what am I trying to say here? Each one of these is basically 1.5 liters. So you put in the right amount of salt for you, and then you drink it, and you drink faster because there's salt in it. If it's so salty it tastes like shit, it's too much salt. If it's so salty you get diarrhea, it's too much salt. But if you put enough salt in it that it tastes better, then, and it doesn't give you heartburn. You know how when you drink a lot of water you get heartburn? Put more salt in there. You won't get the heartburn. And then your body will hold the water. And just because people are like, well, it's going to make your blood pressure go up. I'm like, maybe it might go the diastolic to go up. But if the systolic is high, it's because the tension on the vessels is so great because you're probably dehydrated. So if you're type 1 hypertensive, let's say you're 135/65, fluid is not the problem. I mean, actually is the problem. You're probably dehydrated. So if you added fluid, your bottom number will come up, your top number might come down. Might. If it's the other way around, if for whatever reason you have a high lower level, you know, you might have pitting edema in your ankles. It's like, we'd have to explore, why are you holding all this water? Is it estrogen overload? Is it kidney deficiency? There's got to be a reason for it. So you have to track down that blood pressure problem. And once you solve for the blood pressure problem, it opens your door up to a lot of stuff. But nobody has high blood pressure because they have a pill deficiency. Nobody has high blood pressure because they have a propranolol deficiency. That's not the nutrient that you're missing, is the drug that your Western medicine doctor is pushing on you.
Just to circle back to the diet bit there, what do you make of the argument that the surplus can be helpful if it allows you to increase your calories and increase your carbs, which can have beneficial effects on like IGF-1, mTOR, bring cortisol down? Does that play actually a meaningful effect in your mind, or is that people just looking for excuses to be in a high deficit? Surplus.
So we talked about that. I think we have a whole extra episode on just insulin, because that's something that we were taught is you slam the insulin one way or the other. Either you slam enough carbs to drive up your endogenous pancreatic secretion of insulin until the pancreas starts to fail, and then you supplement it with Lantus, or you can just slam Humalog pre and post training and chase it with some carbs that help you live. And what happens is the insulin binds to the Janus kinase receptor, and then that stimulates the pathway that works its way down to AKT, and then AKT works with mTOR to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, and then also the insulin will also help upregulate IGF-1 expression. But so that's what makes sense, right? But she brings up this point, and I think this is probably true, is as the insulin level goes up, intramuscular triglycerides go up. And then intramuscular triglycerides then are what the cause of insulin resistance.
At the muscle level?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that therefore you do short-term benefit, but long-term harm. So it isn't necessarily the right thing to do.
True. And do you think that's a problem though? Like people are getting their blood panels and going, oh, but my blood glucose or even my resting insulin is good, but that's just present in the blood as opposed to the tissues that maybe we're worried about?
No, so this is how I would investigate for insulin resistance. And I got this from my business partner, Dr. Karina Dodson, that if you got HbA1c, which is nice, that's the long term, that's the red blood cells and how glycosylated they are, and that tells you 120 days worth how it gives you a picture of the last 120 days, how much glucose you were over, right? I rarely see guys who are under 5.5. All right. Then there's the fasted glucose, which was at the time of testing. But that's kind of useless without having a fasted insulin. So if your fasted insulin is under 5, you're insulin sensitive, assuming your HbA1c is under like 5.3 or something. If your fasting insulin's over 5, even if your glucose is good, it means that your cells are getting insulin resistant, so your pancreas is working overtime, so you've got more insulin in the bloodstream. So it's a prelude to insulin resistance. I mean, it's a prelude to diabetes type 2. You're not there yet, but eventually it's going to get to the point where the pancreas can't keep up with the demand, that you're going to get so resistant that the maximum it can pump out, whether it's 13, 14, whatever, insulin fasting, that fasting glucose is going to go up and up and up.
Yeah. So is it more important? Should everyone be tacking that on, that fasting insulin, rather than just worrying about glucose and A1C?
Really now, because something I noticed myself, and I think Justin Harris said, because he's got quite a bit of clients, he noticed that people are having more pancreatic insufficiency post-COVID. And there's a podiatrist that I work with, and she had found that there is a lot of evidence now that there's all type of autoimmune disorders associated with the spike protein that's found in both COVID and the vaccine. And that this long COVID, in a lot of cases, is spike protein damage caused by the vaccine. And that it's sticking around in people's bodies, causing all types of autoimmune disorders, one of which is this pancreatic insufficiency secondary to pancreatitis. So it's interesting to watch this storm unfold because everyone's slamming the Ozempic and the retatrutides and all this stuff, covering up for their subclinical long COVID symptoms. And like, I don't know what the fuck's going to happen first. Either it's going to protect them long enough for the spike proteins to eventually get eliminated, or if just massive organ failure is what's going to come. But shit's building up fast because everyone's slamming these drugs and they're brand new.
Sure. So in truth then, just to tick that diet box for everyone to kind of make it clear for them, they really don't need a surplus or very little of a surplus. And the whole idea that more calories and more carbs is better because of these kind of hormonal changes related to that aren't really, in the long term at least, of any benefit to them. Could it be argued that if you were to stay at maintenance, but you were to have a higher proportion of your calories come from carbs, would that be a way of taking advantage of that kind of pathway without doing harm, or is it really just not necessary?
I think the whole point of driving the carbs up is to drive the insulin up.
Sure.
And as the insulin goes up, the insulin resistance will go up.
Even if you're at maintenance or near enough. Okay.
Yeah, I think that I could be wrong.
No, sure.
You know, it's like...
Well, we all could about everything. Right?
I hate to speak for her because it's her theory. And she'll say it's not a theory, it's fact. But you know what I mean? It's like she knows that stuff better than I do. And so, but that it is on my website, on my YouTube channel. So I want to be able to articulate and answer your questions as to how I understand it. I don't necessarily change what I do or what I coach just because science changes.
True.
Because we all basically got fucked if we try to do that length impartial bullshit. We all got fucked if we try to do the 4-second eccentric bullshit because we got behind shit data way too fast. Whereas a lot of the pro bodybuilders like Derek Lunsford, he didn't change shit. He's like, oh, okay, that's what science says. And, you know, he just waited and wanted to see how the tides change. So when new drugs come out, I'm not going to just jump on the bandwagon. When new peptides come out, I'm like, I'm not going to fucking touch that for 10 years. I want to see, does it even work? Like, which of the Olympians are using this shit? None of them. You know, so there must be a reason. Now, that doesn't mean that they're always cutting edge either, but I like to see because a lot of times the science flips. So it just makes sense if you look at it from take a step back and just look at it. It's like, does it make sense to just force feed yourself to the point of puking and giving yourself diabetes if you're trying to get muscles, if it's at the expense of your waist getting bigger and then you just look worse on stage? No. If the end of the day, the point is to look better on stage, not bigger, better, then don't do anything that makes you look worse.
True.
And so that should be priority one, is like, what can I do to achieve my goals that have no cost? Not, I will do this at any cost. I want to do this at no cost.
Sure.
Because something that's clear cut is powerlifting. You either got through 2 green lights or you got 2 red lights. You know what I mean? Like you either got the lift or you didn't get the lift. And you either broke a record or you didn't. What you look like and how healthy you are doesn't fucking matter per se for the sport. Bodybuilding is more complicated because if you look sick, you look worse. You will have a worse placing. At a subconscious level, if the judge looks at you and is revolting, you're not going to win as likely as if they look at you and you look healthy and attractive.
True.
And it's a subconscious thing. You can't deny it. It's not just his biceps are bigger than his biceps. It's much more organic than that.
When you're talking about those like really subjective markers there, what, you know, for anyone who's watching maybe hasn't seen a bodybuilding show, when you say someone looks sick or unwell on stage, what are we seeing in a physique that kind of hints at that for you?
We're not. It's not a C thing. It's a C thing.
Okay.
It's you just look at them. How should I put this? All right, vulgar. If you were to go to an NA meeting, the chicks that just got there from rehab are less bangable than the chicks who've been 10 years sober. You can't put your finger on it. Just that girl looks toxic as fuck and not personality wise. Like she looks like she's got poison in her. She's less bangable. Now, I'm not saying I look at the stage and I look at a bunch of dudes and, well, that one's the most bangable dude. But I mean is that people just look healthy or they don't look healthy. And like you can't put your finger on what makes someone look healthy.
It's just like an intrinsic kind of subconscious thing.
Yeah. And especially, I think women are better picking up on that than guys are because they're more intuitive and empathetic. Empathetic, empathic. I think both words work.
You mentioned with the training there as well, you know, just to tick that box off as well before we go down the, now it's time for more drugs route. You mentioned the importance of getting a pump and you said it's important, but it's not important. As in like, it's almost like a proxy.
It is a proxy.
Right. So what do you mean by that? Like, what is the pump kind of signifying to you in the training that's happening that means that the training is covering the bases?
All right. So tracer rounds don't do much damage, but they sure help you hit. So if every third round is replaced with a phosphorus round, you can lace the fire and draw a line to where your enemy is. And now you're on target. If you don't have those tracer rounds, you can't see. You're just shooting all over the place. So without a pump, you don't even know if you're hitting the fucking muscle. But with the pump, you know you're hitting the muscle.
Okay.
Maybe the pump itself is an anabolic. Maybe Paul Carter's right, and it's actually the opposite of anabolic. But at least I know that fucking exercise works.
Yeah. So it's kind of a side effect of what in theory would be optimal training, or, you know, effective training. The pump is a side effect of that.
So it's like the metabolic theory that some people, I think like Israel still advocates for, that metabolic has a positive impact on anabolism. But even if you can't draw a causation, there is a correlation. So whether it's again semantics or splitting hairs, I still want to get a fucking pump. Now, whether or not you want to take drugs to give you more pump, I think that gives you just more accuracy with how on target you are. So that's why, like Fenris Fury, the pre-workout I made for my company, Valhalla Labs, I put in 11 grams of citrulline.
I did see that.
I want to have the
Great
most.
label, by the way.
Oh, you like that?
Yeah.
I want to have the most on the planet, because there's this movie called Spinal Tap from the 80s, and they had amps that went up to 11. So I was like, okay, well, if the number one in the industry is 10, then I want to turn it up to 11. So it's like turning it up to 11 is kind of like a joke. And so I have hidden jokes in the brand. A lot of them I can't say on air, but that's one of the clean jokes that's on the brand.
Are you looking to boost recovery, enhance your sex drive, and improve performance in the gym? Do you think your hormones are out of whack and you're tired of getting the runaround from your doctor? You know, things like your hormones are just fine, stop lifting heavy weights, etc., etc., etc. I know what that feels like, as I've been down that road most of my life. This is why we've partnered with Merrick Health. Merrick Health is a premium telehealth platform that specializes in hormone optimization and preventative medicine, ensuring a better quality of life. Merrick Health offers a Table Talk panel tailored for our listeners, featuring comprehensive tests like total and free testosterone, sensitive estradiol, and advanced markers like lipoprotein A and IGF-1. These comprehensive panels of up to 84 carefully selected biomarkers allow you to identify areas of enhancement and maximize your physical, cognitive, and sexual performance. It's much different than the panels you may get from your doctor. Choose between self-service options where you can select lab panels based upon decades of experience, or opt for guided optimization with your own health coach. Start with a detailed breakdown of your labs and receive personalized treatment options, both over the counter and prescription. Visit merrickhealth.com/tabletalk and use the code TABLETALK to get 10% off your first order. Merrick Health isn't just about better health, it's about empowering you to take control of your well-being.
So I turn it up to 11, and it's the most pump ever, because I want to be able to get the quickest pump I can, so I know for fucking sure that's an effective set. Like out of 15 reps, okay, rep 4, I'm starting to get a pump, then I know I'm on target.
Sure. So just for those who are listening, and we kind of skipped over that, like the metabolic theory, lactate theory, or whatever, are you referring to the fact that the idea is that a pump and the lactate that comes with it has some kind of stimulatory effect on hypertrophy, and that is kind of up in the air in many people's opinions?
In many people's opinions, yeah. But I put lactate in the Thor's Hammer product because I am one of the people that thinks metabolic has an effect. Okay,
and what makes you lean towards it? Because obviously we've got mechanistic data that shows it does all these things and brings down myostatin and increases IGF-1, etc. Are you of the belief that happens to a significant enough degree that it can enhance hypertrophy?
Well, statistically significant, it doesn't mean clinical significance. So we don't know that it actually does shit. We know that the mechanistic data is the best data because we're not having outcome data in our population. So when we have outcome data on the wrong population, that ain't worth crap. If I've got outcome data that high protein diets cause kidney damage on people with kidney disease, or if I've got outcome data that estrogen hurts IGF-1 on postmenopausal women using birth control pills, and that's their form of estrogen in the absence of testosterone, that outcome data is shit. I'm not going to pay attention to that outcome data. But I can take that mechanistic data and combine it with this mechanistic data and this mechanistic data and compile an entire module of data that's like, okay, estrogen binds here, estrogen binds there, this is upregulated, this is downregulated, testosterone blocks here, the progesterone comes in here, downregulates this, upregulates that, progesterone beta comes here, blocks this, Nandrolone binds here, upregulates here, and then trenbolone comes here, downregulates there. Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, how the fuck do I put that on the screen? And I got Kai for that. That would take me 30 minutes to draw it on a dry erase board. But now, based on like that most recent video I did, which I don't even remember the fucking title, but it was, anyway, it was the most recent video I did where I talked about the structure. It was basically structure is the key word of Primo and the structure Boldenone versus the structure of Masteron. He was capable of making the graphics happen as I was talking. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be the next level. Yeah. This is what the industry standard needs to be. Everybody needs to catch up and do it this way so that we can really communicate and teach, because colleges don't have that shit. No. There's no college that has that shit in anything. So it's like Jordan Peterson's of university is the only thing that's at that level. So if we can bring them the best education on earth on YouTube, and you got multiple channels doing that, so it's not just my opinion. You got everybody saying that'd be fucking awesome. And if someone disagrees with me, if we could get on a podcast together and discuss it, and then after the podcast, our post-production teams put up the graphics to show these opposing theories, that the 2026 through 2030 is an amazing time for people, because everyone's going to be making gains. People are going to be healthier. Probably won't see people dropping dead if they listen.
So that's a nice segue, because, you know, we've kind of covered those three boxes there about, okay, now you need more drugs. I think it would have been a really cool drinking game to say every time you say the word Masteron, someone takes a drink in this podcast, because I know you're a big fan, and we will go into why that is. But if we're talking in generalities here, you know, people usually split PEDs into like the androgens, the DHTs, and the 19-nors and stuff like that. In your, you know, in general principle, what is the best way to build a stack that kind of encapsulates the benefits of all three of those, which is obviously where a lot of people are kind of going wrong?
So what's funny is this concept, I think, was invented by Broderick Chavez. And I reached out to him and I tried to get him on my podcast before the Arnold, but we're definitely going to touch base after the Arnold. So I don't want to speak for him, but I'm pretty sure I know his shtick, basically. I paid attention for about the past 8 years to it. So my model's a little different than his, right? So do you want me to talk about...
I want you to talk about your model.
Okay.
Sure.
So rather than grouping them into the families based on how they were created, I like looking at the families based on what they are. So like, if you had 3 mob families, right? Then, okay, they're all Sicilian, if there's a Sicilian Cosa Nostra, right? It's like, but that doesn't mean that just because you're part of the Gambino family, you're going to do what the Gambinos do. You know, you might be a black sheep and do the opposite. You know what I mean? I shouldn't talk about real people, actually, because that's going to get me whacked. but I guess the point is I would rather just group them as what their structure is. Yeah. Because, for example, Proviron is just DHT with a methyl group added to position 1, right? And DHB is just Boldenone that's been 5-alpha reduced. But when you mix those together, when you take the double bond at position 1 and the methyl group added at position 1 of DHB plus Proviron, if they had a baby, that baby would be Primo.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So is Primo going to work like DHT? Because supposedly it's part of the DHT superfamily. It's like, fuck no, it's got a double bond at position 1. That's way more relevant of a structural change than just a methyl group at position 1. It's going to have more stability to that A-ring, which means it's going to be much more resistant to aromatization. Yeah. So, or also to 5-alpha HSD, breaking it down inside the cytoplasm. So whereas Proviron, which really is just DHT with a methyl group at position 1, the methyl group at position 1 makes it more resistant to the liver decomposing it when it's orally administered. That has no protection at position 2. So because there's no protection in position 2, 3-alpha HSD is going to decompose it. It's never going to bind to the cytosolic androgen receptor. It's never going to bind to the DNA. It's never going to make any protein. So because it doesn't make a protein, you have no contractile elements. Now, none of this has fucking to do with satellite cells. There's a whole nother pathway for generating muscle.
I was going to say, if Proviron is not doing that, what is it doing?
It's blocking the HSD, so the other 5-alpha reduced steroids can get past the HSD and hit the androgen receptor. So Proviron's like throwing peanut butter to a guard dog, while Primo and Masteron like a burger.
Yeah. So the idea of using it on its own is almost ridiculous. Well, because it gets done. That's why I'm asking.
It helps dudes have bigger loads and makes their dicks hard.
Cool.
So it's like, if you don't want to use Cialis for whatever reason, maybe you're on too much blood pressure medication, and if you take Cialis or Viagra and you're going to faint, because nothing is as good in bed as a dude who passes out on top of you. So like, I would know from experience. I'm saying from the girl's point of view, but I just basically like outed myself as a bottom. No, I'm saying, but so what were we talking about? That Viagra is going to knock you out. You can't use it. Proviron's the old school way of blasting DHT to make your dick so sensitive it'll get hard for anything.
Okay, so if the whole, and I don't want to knock Chavez's model,
right?
But let's say that isn't the model that you use, and instead you're going via each compound does this specific thing or has this effect as opposed to grouping them all together. How do you build some kind of stacking model then based on now not having groups, if you like?
So I believe, and I may not be correct about this, but this is what I think. Oh, I mean, you know what? I'm not going to say what I think. I'm going to say what I know.
Okay.
I took John Jewett's university, and he had a different model, which is you build out your testosterone to get enough estrogen to give you health benefits and be present to convert the GH to IGF-1. And then you don't run those anymore. That's an HRT test. GH is as needed to get the best results. I introduced the whole concept that I'm going to use the IGF-1 as the marker for the limit of GH and estradiol.
Sure.
I took a year and I mapped out exactly how much GH and exactly how much estrogen I need to maximize my conversion IGF-1. And we talked about that extensively in the last episode. And it's not an exact science because other things can play into it, like insulin. I found that if I added a couple extra 1,000 calories, my IGF-1 would go from a 380 to a 580. So it isn't just dependent on estrogen. It isn't just dependent on GH. And as testosterone increases, is it testosterone or the androgen receptor? We're not sure, but the tests were done with testosterone. Then the somatostatin decreases. So we have some synergy there. So once you've got that IGF where you want it, and it may not be maxed out because I grew, since we last had our podcast, I grew 2 shoe sizes. So I obviously was using too much IGF-1. I wasn't injecting IGF-1, I was generating IGF-1 by using GH. I ran as much as 4 grams a year at one point, and I was running 26 units of GH at that point.
Per day?
Yeah. And 4 grams a year per week. But I was doing...
no, the GH was per day.
26 units per day. And my feet had grown. Maybe my facial skin has grown. I'm not sure. But I know my feet have grown because I was having extreme pain with almost all my leg exercises. And I was having fucked up back problems. And I finally bought bigger shoes, just as a guess. Like maybe my feet are bigger, because people could see that my feet were busting out the sides of my shoes. And like my actual, where the footprint was, the actual sole of the shoe would be the middle of the footprint. The sides of the shoe wrapped around. And so I was like, well, okay, so at some point I was overdoing it. What point that was, I don't know. But for like several years, I was coasting basically on 1.5 grams a year and 8 units of GH, never had any problems. So I know, and I think I was safe at 2.25 grams a year. And I think I was safe at like, it didn't matter if I used 6 units of GH, if I used 12 units of GH, 14, I always had the same IGF-1. More than 6 units GH wasn't helping my IGF-1. At that point, to go over, after 6 units GH is used, it's all estrogen up to 100. This is just in me. This isn't in anybody else. And then the food and testosterone can upregulate even further. So where were you going? Oh, my model. So I don't want to run too much test, because too much test means too much DHT or too much water retention or too much estrogen. And the way that the water retention occurs is two-factor. One is testosterone binds to the aldosterone receptor, the mineralocorticoid receptor on the kidneys, and makes you retain salt. The other is testosterone will deactivate 11 beta hydroxylase, which then shunts cortisol production over to mineralocorticoid production. It actually makes an intermediary step that's about stronger than aldosterone. But you're getting the anti-catabolic effects of having less cortisol, and you're having the increased mineralocorticoid. So what happens, you retain even more sodium. So I think the reason why people think they get bigger when they use test, and test is best for growth, is that you're retaining more water, so you look bigger. You're retaining more water in the muscle, so you look better. Your ratio of androgen to estrogen is lower, so you look harder, because the DHT cancels out the estrogen increase in this parameter. The DHT increases your strength directly, and the water retention fills the muscle cell, creates hydrostatic force on the inside of the muscle cell, and that causes strength to go up. So you've got multiple mechanisms making you look bigger, harder, stronger. So testosterone makes you feel like you're better.
So what's the downside here? Because this all sounds really good so far.
Because the DHT is where the DHT and the estrogen, where all side effects come from.
Right, okay.
If you take a drug that doesn't convert, if you had some magical version of testosterone that converted into nothing, it shouldn't have any downsides, right? So because there's a balance. And so for different people, it's different things. Some people are going to lose their hair no matter what, even if they have 50 DHT. Some people could have a 300 DHT and not lose their hair. But I mean, the hair loss thing is a big argument people have, and then we'll probably get to that too. But right there, at some point, usually what I've seen is it's around 280 to 350, basically 40 to 50 milligrams a day. Because I like only talking about these drugs in daily dose. I don't like talking about weekly. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Because if you're dosing it daily, why would you talk about it weekly? And I think John came to the same conclusion that 400 a week is the upper limit that most people can get away with. Anything more than that, you're going to need to cancel out some of that aromatization with Primo. And we'll get to that later. But I don't even like that idea. It's like, why run up a drug so high you have to bring in a new drug to cancel out that drug? To me, that's addict thinking. And that got started by the psychiatrists. Psychiatrists will put you on one med, then they'll put you on another med to deal with the side effects of that med, then another med to deal with that side effects, then another med. Meanwhile, you're taking kidney damage from the lithium, and you're taking sexual dysfunction from the Prozac. So now you got to go see an endocrinologist about the sexual dysfunction, or a urologist, or a gynecologist if you're a woman. You got to go see a nephrologist for the kidneys. So the kidney doctor puts you on medicine that's good for your kidneys but bad for your heart. And it's like, after a while, all your side effects come from the medicine. And the third leading cause of death is iatrogenic, which means caused by doctors. So there's heart disease, cancer, doctors. Those are the 3 leading causes of death. So you stay the fuck away. Do not use extra drugs to cancel out a shit drug. Switch your drug and don't use a shit drug. Or if it's something you need to have, like a hormone, use the right amount of that hormone. Don't go over. So a good amount of test I found was 20 for HRT, as much as 40, maybe even 50 for some guys. Now, me, because I've been doing this stuff for 15 years, I actually am a pro bodybuilder. I actually need like 70 a day to get the same results some of my other guys get with 20 a day.
But I mean, that's still 490, 500 a week, which is chump change compared to what some people are putting around, right?
Correct, exactly. So in like most recently, I had some odd shit where I tested out some EQ and I was running 100 tests a day and I was running 30 EQ a day and my estradiol was 19. So I was like, in the off season. So I've got quad striations in the off season. I don't need that. So took the EQ out turn the test up. We want to get that estrogen up so I can get better conversion. But I am cranking at 425 IGF-1. So I'm doing something right.
Sure.
Probably because I'm using Lantus. But that's the point, is there's a lot of nuance to this. But that's not a base model you give to, it's not like the Fisher-Price steroid cycle. You know, like the Fisher-Price steroid cycle is 20 milligrams a test, 2 units of GH, ramp those up until you're maybe at 40 milligrams a test, 8 units of GH, and then you add in your primary anabolic if you need it.
Okay.
If you're growing, if you're getting stronger, you don't need it. But if you're going to add something, if you can't grow any other way, that's when we add the Masteron. Because remember how I talked about the perfect drug would be a test that doesn't deactivate 11 beta hydroxylase, that doesn't convert to DHT, that doesn't convert to estrogen. That's Masteron.
Okay.
This episode of Table Talk is brought to you by Troponin Supplements, a company that's changing the game when it comes to performance supplements. Today, I want to talk to you about the 3 supplements that I like best. ATP is your go-to supplement when you need fast, clean energy and sharp mental focus without the crash. It gives me that focus and the energy that I'm looking for and doesn't have the crash at the end like you find with a lot of other supplements that are out there. Next up is Field Rations, which is my go-to intra-workout. It's no stim, but it provides all the nutrients to allow for better recovery and better stamina, so to say. And then there's Suppressor Max. This is for anyone that loves carbs but wants to be able to handle them a little bit better. It helps your body use carbs more efficiently, keeps blood sugar steady, and gives you better energy after meals without that sugar crash. Head over to Troponin Supplements and use the code TABLETALK for 10% off your order.
So level 1 is test and growth hormone go high enough to get the level of estrogen and IGF-1 that we want to create a good environment for growth in general.
And health, yeah.
Yeah, so that's like level 1, you know,
Right.
You milk that for all you can.
Exactly.
Okay, so then step 2, should we say, is where Masteron comes, because as you're saying,
Right.
like there's no point going 600 test, 800, 1 gram, whatever, or at least it's counterintuitive or not the optimal
It's not
way to go.
optimal. It's not
Right.
optimal.
So
there is a point to it. It'll fucking work.
Oh, I'm sure.
But you're going to get pimples or hair loss or bitch tits or lip tick or all of them, right?
Okay, so we've capped out level 1, so then we go to level 2. You say Masteron, so let's drink. So you're a big fan of it. So what is that bringing to the table that other secondary or ancillary products do not?
Nothing.
Okay.
It's what it doesn't bring. Why do you get first class? There's no reason to get first class. But what don't you get in first class? You don't get obnoxious fucking kids. You don't get loud, tacky people. You don't get ghetto shit. First class is free of low class. So it's like, that's why I like Masteron, is Masteron just has no bullshit associated. There's no baggage. It's like, it's some vanilla chick who's a 5 face, 5 body. There's nothing special about her, but she doesn't have an ex-boyfriend with a criminal record. She doesn't have a kid who doesn't know what gender he is on smack. She doesn't have all the shit the other girls come with.
So what is special about it that gives it that then? Because, you know, and a lot of your videos are talking about Masteron, how it should be used over things like EQ and Primo, and how people think EQ and Primo and Masteron do these things when they don't. And you've already kind of mentioned in the structure there, but if you could just kind of go into that a little bit more about why people think EQ and Primo does X when actually Masteron does X and they all kind of do Y. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so... Philosophically, people are confused about what science is. We saw that in the 2020 zone, where science is a religion to lower IQ people. That, and this is going to hurt some people's feelings, but that's what I do best. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. So if you're not that bright, your emotions are stronger than your logic. That's going to piss off people right there. Like, I'm very emotional, but I'm smart. My mom said so. It's like, so if you're really emotional and you don't do logic too good, then the story that is validating the shit you want to hear is the story you're going to cling to. Or even worse, the first story you hear is the one you think is true, and then every story that comes after is the one you think is false. And the charismatic charlatan will be able to sell the emotional people better than the nerdy scientist who actually knows what he's talking about, because they lack the social skills to be convincing. The salesman, the used car salesman, is going to sell you his version of science, which is a religion, and you're going to buy it because you've got good production value, because you look the part, because you're using proper NLP when you talk. You've got all the little, like Obama talks a certain way, Trump talks a certain way. That's why they win, is because the way they talk. They don't talk like this, and then blah, 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 blah. Like Tim Walz doesn't know how to fucking talk. So that doesn't help. Kamala didn't know how to fucking talk. If you need to know how to talk, if you're going to sell stuff, so they can talk and they can sell shit. And they're selling a religion, and they call that religion science. Science is the opposite. Trust the science is oxymoronic. Science is, I have skepticism and I don't believe anything. And I'm going to have a hypothesis, and I'm going to try to prove the null hypothesis. And if I can't prove the null hypothesis, I have no choice but to accept the original hypothesis is true by data collection, by data analysis, by conclusion drawn from, and then that conclusion is a launch point to make a refined experiment again. And it's like The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The second Roland gets to the Dark Tower, you get to the first page of the first fucking book. It's just a circle. And you'll never find the truth. It'll always be out there. You're like fucking Mulder. So you're Mulder and
That's
Scully.
a great analogy, brother.
Yeah. So thank you, man. So it's like, that's the point, is you always look for the truth. And what's the reward? The reward is less people will die. You will get less people to kill themselves. Because it's like lemmings running off a cliff as fast as they can. And you're trying to be like, motherfuckers, there's a cliff there. Like, what do you know? And then they jump off the cliff. And you're like, oh my God, what the fuck am I doing? And it's like, why am I on this planet? I must have missed my planet and got off at the wrong exit. It's like my soul got off at the wrong exit because I do not belong on this planet. All right, so
how does this come back to Masteron? Not being people not being a big enough proponent of it.
So the priests are pushing, and I'm going to call them premagogues, that they're basically worship at the altar of Primo. And they heard a rumor, an urban legend that Primo was best. And so they repeated it.
Sure.
And because their education comes from watching YouTube. Because on YouTube, so it's an echo chamber on YouTube of people watching each other's videos, and they're just repeating what they say. So this creates a narrative that the uneducated emotional person latches onto, and they believe it because of safety in numbers. So the herd mentality, the sheep mindset is, if 7 people are saying one thing or 10 people are saying one thing and one guy's saying something else, they're right and he's wrong. Irregardless of education, irregardless of if it makes sense, irregardless if one's a successful competitive bodybuilder and the other ones aren't. So they're going to latch onto whatever is popular. Who the fuck was using Primo 10 years ago? Nobody. People are like, well, Arnold used to do it. It's like Arnold used to use D-ball and Primo. D-ball they didn't have testosterone. So the only source of estrogen was D-ball.
Sure.
But you can mitigate that estrogen with the aromatase aromatase inhibition action of the Primo. That the Primo's metabolite is an aromatase inhibitor. So you can balance D-ball and Primo to get the perfect blend of DHB, because dianabol, when 5-alpha reduced, turns into DHB. So you got DHB as an anabolic, and you have methyl estrogen, and then you've got the Primo, which is going to be another, it's a 5-alpha reduced, so a DHT derivative, but it doesn't work like DHT. It's just an anabolic compound that's resistant to the 3-alpha HSD enzyme inside the cytoplasm. So it is a good cycle, but it's not the best cycle.
Sure.
So just because Arnold did it doesn't make it true. Do you train like Arnold? Are you doing 60 sets of chest and 60 sets of back Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Are you going chest and back at AM, legs PM, next day, delts and arms AM, cardio and abs PM, and that's a 2-day split for total body, and you repeat that 3 times and take Sunday off and go lay on the beach for natural sunlight? No, you're not doing a fucking thing Arnold's doing. So why the fuck are you going to use the steroids Arnold's doing?
True.
So it's the same thing. It's like these new kids on the block are pushing this Primo drug. Like, oh, it's the greatest thing ever. It's like Nuke from fucking RoboCop. It's like, where was it in RoboCop 1? There wasn't Nuke in RoboCop 1. Exactly. It's like Nuke's the new kid on the block. And RoboCop has to step into town and put holes in some drug dealers and take Nuke off the market.
Sure. So in that context, is the Primo kind of like you mentioned Proviron earlier, where it's coming in basically just to allow the other drug to work better? So like with the D-bol and the Primo, you mentioned Proviron kind of blocking and allowing.
No, I don't think it is. I think that Primo isn't a bad drug. If you watch my steroid tier list, it's a B tier drug. I like Primo. I just don't think it's inferior in every way to Masteron.
Okay.
And it has side effects that Masteron doesn't have. So there's no logic to using Primo.
Sure.
So like I have the scaling system, right? The drug, if we converted drugs to girls, all right, how effective the drug is at building muscle, its potency is body, and how safe it is face. All right. So like Masteron would be like a 10 face and like a 4 body. All right. And Primo would be like an 8 face and a 5 body. So which one has the higher average?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Simple.
Sure.
Yeah.
In chick math.
And chick math.
Sure. So if we've hit that upper ceiling on level 1, which is the test and the GH, there's no point pushing either of those higher. Masteron is then the smartest, most optimal choice, whatever. For
it doesn't convert to DHT. It doesn't convert to estrogen. It doesn't convert to 11 beta hydroxylase. People are using 2-3 grams of this shit and not getting problems. Name one motherfucker that can use a gram of Primo and not crush his estrogen.
So that was going to be my next question. Is that where you get the scaling from? Because you're talking about being on 2 grams plus, whatever it might be. Is that where the scaling comes from then?
Yeah.
And is that all Masteron, or does that then get kind of divided up?
Like I was running on prep 50 tests a day and 450 Masteron. Blood work was better than when I switched to 100 tests a day and 400 Masteron.
Oh.
So to me, that settles it.
So there's no reason at any other point for any of those other things to come in your opinion?
Which other things? Like Primo and EQ?
Like, okay, let's talk like Deca, EQ, Primo.
So let's go down the list. All right, so it's like the ex-girlfriend list. All right, so Primo, I've got current girlfriend, Masteron. Ex-girlfriend number 1, Primo. Pros and cons. All right. Primo has a reputation for being slightly more anabolic. Like 1 point more on a 10-point scale.
Sure.
So it's like if Masteron had like a 7 body, Primo has an 8 body. Okay, fine. And it's like, as far as aromatase inhibition, that's a double-edged sword. It can lower that's great if you're on too much test.
Yeah.
But if you're not on too much test, you don't want to have an aromatase effect.
Yeah.
So that special feature is a double-edged sword. We don't need that.
Yeah, because we're assuming here that we're using this kind of model or approach that you're talking about, so we don't need that anyway.
So like if right, and that's the thing is a lot of people, they take their shit sandwich and they try to add my pickles to it, and they're like, this sandwich still tastes like shit. It's like, that's because you added my pickles to your shit sandwich. Why don't you have my delicious Cuban and not change it? I'm the chef. Shut the fuck up and eat it. At least take a bite and tell me how it tastes. Yeah. And then the people who take a bite, and they're like, this tastes amazing. This is the best sandwich I've ever had. I'm never going to eat another sandwich again. I was like, that's right. Yeah. You're done. You don't have to keep looking for a sandwich. You've got the best sandwich. Yeah. So we've got Primo. Downside number 1, it's got the methylation at carbon 1. That's because it used to be an oral, but it's not an oral anymore. It's kind of like vestigial tail. That the girlfriend doesn't, why does this ex-girlfriend have a tail? It's because her ancestors used to be a different species, but she still has the vestigial tail. We don't need that because we've got a 17 methyl group, 17 alkyl group. We've added an enaphate molecule to the Primo, and we're injecting it. We don't need that 1' methyl group to protect it from the liver because we're not swallowing it. We're not going and spraying it in our mouth. We're injecting it. So we don't need that. Sure. So it's liver toxic for no fucking reason. 2, hurts. It hurts bad. And it's not like it hurts like, oh, I've got vaginitis. It hurts. It's like this has made my arm grow 3 inches and it's purple.
Okay.
Like that's really bad if you're a cosmetic athlete.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, this is really traumatic. I'm not going to be able to lift because of how bad this hurts.
Sure.
It's fucking like 3 times the price.
Yep.
It's so fucking expensive. It's 150 times the price with half the concentration.
Sure.
That's 3 times the price. So we're going to get to my economics later. I actually have an economics later. Like if you cash in your Serostim and Primo for Metatropin and Masteron, here's what you can have.
Yeah.
And I actually have like houses in certain cities and the car that goes with it. Like you can have a $500,000 house and a Cadillac Escalade for the amount of money you're spending on Serostim and Primo. Or you could have a McLaren and a small cottage. Or, I mean, it's so crazy how much people blow on this stuff and what the value is. Because they're like, well, I've got a lot of money. I don't care. I'm like, you could hire a new employee to do all the shit you don't want to do for the price. And it's not like you're not getting GH. You're still getting, you're going to get a different brand of GH. You're going to get a different brand of Anabolic. But back to Primo. All right. So we've covered the big flaws. It's too fucking pricey. It hurts on injection, which is going to cause inflammation, which is going to cause satellite cells to be used to repair the muscle, which means the satellite cells, assuming they're finite, means they're not going to be used to grow tissue down the road. Sure. So you're making your muscles capacity for size permanently lower just to use a brand that's overpriced. So you can brag about it like a Gucci purse. Like I use Primo. It's like your little prima donna. So
that's a great expression.
It's like the bitchiest fucking drug. Oh my God. So the Primogogs pushed this shit. It's like they never thought this stuff through.
The Primogogs.
Yeah, the Primogogs. They pushed this drug. I mean, have you thought any of this shit through? Like what you could get for something, you could get like 20 units of GH a day for the price of this fucking Primo. It's so stupid. This makes me so upset. And that I'm actually think it's funny. And it's like, all right. And it's not that it's a bad drug. It's still a B tier drug. That's how bad the other ones are. All right.
Wow. Okay. So that's a good segue into whatever's next then.
So the next worst ex-girlfriend is EQ, right? EQ is a lot like Primo because it's got the double bonded position 1, and it can be an aromatase inhibitor too. But it's a stronger aromatase.
Which again, we've already established we probably don't need.
Which means you can't use as much. Because you're going to crush your estrogen, and we need the estrogen to convert GH to IGF-1. So we're going to just tear the floor out of the whole model if we do this. So the EQ, it has the benefit of causing enlargement of the kidneys. Okay, so I don't need fucking kidneys. I'll just go to Mexico and steal some tourists. But it's like, fuck my kidneys. Let them die. And it's like, so... Okay, let's say you don't care about kidneys. Okay. It's like,
you got 2, right? Okay.
Because you've damaged the kidneys, you're driving up EPO. So it means it's going to cause red blood count to go up, which now is going to make your blood thicker, which means you're going to listen to your doctor and go give blood. And it's like leeches are expensive, or you could just give the blood out and then you're going to have to eat more food to repair it. And it's like, none of this shit makes any fucking sense, guys. Even if my theory is correct and that it's the aromatase inhibition of the EQ causes dehydration. And that's why you look more vascular. That's why your hematocrit's up. And the dehydration is what's causing the kidney damage because nothing's harder on the kidneys than dehydration. And the kidney damage is then in turn causing EPO to go up. And the EPO is driving up the red blood cells, which then makes the hematocrit go up. Then it's a cycle effect, right? That's why the longer you stay on the EQ, the worse your body gets. Okay. So I think if you just stayed hydrated, you could probably mitigate most of these things. But here's a thought: don't use the shit drug in the first place.
Mitigation strategies for bad choices in the first place.
Yeah, it's just like, it's like I found the cheapest lawyer to help me with my court case with the ex-girlfriend. It's like, or you could just not date her. Just don't date her.
So is there any redeeming qualities here for EQ?
EQ's a B tier. That's how bad the other ones are.
Oh, that's still B tier.
That's still B tier.
Okay, so we're plunging into what depths after that then?
Winstrol?
Winstrol is a special use. The Winstrol is not a steroid you date. It's a special occasion.
It's a fling.
Winstrol is who you call when you're in Vegas.
Well played.
So you're going to the Olympia, which happens to be in Vegas, and you got 3 days. We thought you got 3 days from when you stop shooting your drugs, and you need to take something.
Yeah.
So Winstrol has a reputation for knocking out cortisol production, for knocking out glucocorticoid binding protein, and also blocking at the glucocorticoid receptor. So it's gonna fucking dry you out hard. And because anything that's anti-catabolic is anabolic indirectly.
Yep.
So you basically drive up anabolism through a different mechanism.
Sure.
So it wouldn't hurt. It would help really good if you were in a calorie deficit. Usually you're carbing up at this point. You're not in a calorie deficit anymore. That's not why you're using it. You're using it because the glucocorticoid class is almost as strong or even stronger than the mineralocorticoid class when it binds to the kidneys. So you're going to flush a lot of sodium. You're going to lose a lot of water that way. I have a suspicion it also works as a 21-hydroxylase inhibitor, so that you lose all of it. Yep. You lose all the glucocorticoid, you lose all the mineralocorticoid. So you just get dry as fuck on Winstrol.
I am using the Elite Hack Squat. Amazing, super rigid pad, crazy friction. This machine is clearly made by people who lift heavy.
Hello, Matt Goodwin, elitefts.com, equipment sales. Today we are looking at the Elite FTS Signature Hack Squat machine. Boy, this thing is a monster. It's gonna have an extra wide foot plate on here. Gets you a nice big wide stance on here. Come in narrow, come in wide. It will come with black diamond texture on here. Give you guys a little extra grip. This one particularly is shown with the optional laser logo side panels. So this does not come with the side panels. This will be an empty space here unless you pay the extra customization fee to get these logo panels. Highly recommended if you're a gym owner, a school, any kind of thing like that. I would definitely get the panels. A couple $100 extra bucks. Looks fantastic. This thing is it's great. We're gonna have band pegs on the top and on the bottom. Why on the top? Because this thing is heavy. So you need to deload the weight if you have a client that may be a little bit older, a little bit younger, whatever, can't handle the whole weight of the sled. We have these band pegs up on top so we can deload that weight to make it a little bit easier for you. Got adjustable handles here to kind of give yourself some grip. The release point is up here on your shoulders. So when you release it, push them out, squat, push them back in, everything locks in together. This thing comes exactly the way it's shown here. So there is no assembly. This is gonna come in one big giant piece. You're probably gonna need to have a forklift. You're probably gonna need double doors to get it inside your building. So it is massive, be prepared for that. So don't take that lightly. This thing will be kind of a hassle to get off a truck and get inside. So contact an equipment specialist. You can hit me directly at mgoodwin@elitefts.net. You can go to the website, www.elitefts.com, click equipment, drop down, plate loaded. You'll see this thing right on there. Again, talk to one of us, myself, Nate Harvey, Chris Bartle, Luke Coleman, before you guys buy this, because it is a big piece, and let's make sure that you guys are prepared to receive it.
That's, I think, a special feature.
Yeah.
It's just as anabolic as Anavar, but it's the most dry drug you can use.
Sure.
So it's really good those last 3 days before a show. There's no other application for it that I can think of.
So what about Anavar then? If they share many commonalities there, is because Anavar doesn't dry you out so much, does that have more application, or is that more the same?
So Anavar is like, I'm not even going to compare it to, because the girls, people say it's a girl drug, so it's kind of hard to work it in this analogy.
Yeah, sure.
So it's like your bisexual ex-girlfriend. All right, so it's like Anavar is fucking awesome. It's got like a 9 face. It's got like a 10 body. The downside is it will rip your heart out and stomp on it. So Anavar will crush HDL like nothing else. And crushing HDL is going to drive up the LDL. And if you've got high blood pressure, and if you have inflammation, then you're going to get heart disease. You're going to get atherosclerotic plaques, right? And so, which could calcify if you're on a statin.
Sure.
Aren't you glad they put that in the water now? So this is the point, is that it's just in the end, unless you're someone like me where I can have a 17 HDL and a 40 LDL, you're not getting away with using Anavar.
Sure.
Now, Anavar is even cooler. She's almost like a booty call, not even like 3 nights in Vegas. This is just a booty call thing. Like, you can take Anavar sublingually, and it'll get in your bloodstream so fast. It hits the muscle, it changes the half-life. And this is all theoretical. But people, even if I'm wrong, it's still going to work the way it would if it was the normal model where you swallow it. But if I'm right, then you can absorb it even faster. It gets to the muscle while you train, and it can give you a huge strength increase.
Sure.
So to me, Anavar is a wiser choice for powerlifting than Anadrol, except for one caveat.
Yeah.
Anavar's got a sister, Anadrol, and Anadrol is a little heavier. But that could be, fun in its own right? So in certain situations where a little bit more cushion is useful, like a bench shirt, so that with Anadrol causes more water retention, so you get all the advantages of Anavar, but you also have more water retention, so you can actually use the bench shirt more efficiently. Because it's like an exoskeleton, a bench shirt. It fills in with blubber and water, and it actually works through hydraulic force to help push the weight.
So you're talking about orals in this context in very short-term specific application.
Right. Injectables are long-term girlfriends. Orals are short-term clings.
So why is it that longer-term oral use is so common? Is it just, you're going to say like uneducated or whatever?
Why do guys date girls that they should only not date? Why do guys get involved with girls that are not wife material? Because they're dumb.
Sure. Okay.
I mean, and that's going to hurt people's feelings because, I love her. And it's like, yeah, it's true, but you don't love the steroid. So there's no reason to fall in love with a toxic compound. Sure. You can fall in love with a toxic woman. We've all done it. But you don't have to fall in love with a toxic compound.
So what about halotestin then, if we're staying on oral?
Fuck.
And and M-Tren and all those wonderful things.
They just got out of prison.
Okay.
Halo went to prison for stabbing a dude.
I'm just thinking, what do you see on meat day? You see methyltrianolone, you see Halo, these types of things floating around. Are they actually if you're saying you can get these benefits from Anavar and Anadrol, especially if they're sublingual, right? Do those really even have a place, or are they bringing something to the table that we haven't discussed yet?
So Halo, is ironic back to it's actually part of the testosterone family. So it's got a fluorine, halogen gas bound to the A ring, I believe. And it's so fucking electronegative. It has such a bizarre property that it has several metabolites and no one knows what the fuck they do.
Okay.
So Halo's kind of like if the ex-girlfriend came from a different dimension and she was able...
In the multiverse.
And she was able to clone herself with each of her personalities. So you've got a multiple personality disorder ex-girlfriend who's violent, but came from an extra dimensional plane and is able to summon. Each plane has a different one of her personalities, and you don't know which one's going to happen and when. You never know which version of her you got, and everybody gets a different one. It's not a good idea.
So any of them good though? Are any of these multiverse ex-girlfriends actually good if you get the good one? If there is such thing?
I guess you could okay, so I'm not going to go off on this tangent too much because it loses its relevancy, but I actually came up with a cool idea. But it makes you strong as fuck. It makes you angry as fuck. I remember once I was snorting Halo before I went on stage, and that was a good posing routine. Now, that doesn't mean I'm endorsing it for anyone else, but it's not like I'm not acting like I'm superior to people because I like this drug and all of these drugs are terrible and you're all fucking retards. It's like I am the king retard. I've done everything to the hilt. I've ran 100 tren a day. I've ran a 10 methyltren, 1 dimethyltren at the same time.
Oh, that would have been fun.
It wasn't fun for anyone near me.
I bet, yeah.
I was sweating like crazy. And what's funny is, that rumor that trends like cologne for crazy chicks? Imagine if you had a blend and you're on tren, methyltren, and dimethyltren. That was very, very strange life I lived. But so right here, we got Halo, strength, aggression. People know that, but it's because the metabolites are so hyper androgenic.
Yep.
So whatever 5-alpha reduced version of that is crazy strong. Now they don't know. This is conjecture. I don't know shit about it. I don't think they have any studies on it. The only person I know of who did some studying about this is Ty Clark, and he says it's completely healthy. I'm like, that's cool. If it doesn't fuck up your liver, that's great. Your liver's going to get pucked up when you get stabbed because you're in prison because you killed somebody because it made you so angry.
Yeah. So physiologically, it's healthy.
Well, it's physiologically having a shiv in your liver is not good for your liver. And so people are like, you're being dramatic. It's like, okay, go ahead, take all the halo you want.
We skipped DECA.
We did. That was next on my list here.
The Nandrolone class is a confusing class. Nandrolone class is very confusing. All right, so some people say it's more like progesterone. So to understand what makes Nandrolone special, we have to talk about progesterone. So the progesterone alpha receptor and progesterone beta receptor. The progesterone alpha receptor is an inhibitory receptor on progesterone beta. Progesterone beta is an inhibitory receptor on estrogen alpha and an activatory on estrogen beta. Estrogen beta is inhibitory on estrogen alpha. So in order to understand how progesterone works, you have to understand how estrogen works. I broke it up into 2 basic categories. Of course, this is more complicated than I make it sound, but I mean, for fuck's sake, we're talking...
All of this is, though.
Yeah, but we're talking 800, 900 level, college level shit to some of the audience hasn't went to college. You know, like, so I don't expect them to understand any of it. So I want to make it as simple as possible. I have it grouped as estrogen alpha is the feminizing estrogen receptor, and estrogen beta is the anabolic estrogen receptor. It's not that simple, but it's kind of that simple. So if we have a progestin that binds to progesterone beta, and that's going to inhibit estrogen alpha. So here's some working models. Most people would say that tren causes, some people say it causes gyno in them. Some people says it clears up their gyno. It's confusing, huh? It's a partial agonist for progesterone receptors. Okay. What's a partial agonist? So an agonist is a ligand that binds to a receptor and sends the positive signal that it's supposed to send. An antagonist sends a null signal. A reverse agonist sends the opposite signal. So there's a rumor, I don't know if it's true, that partial agonism is achieved through low binding affinity. So if you've got, for instance, DECA has the highest binding affinity for the androgen receptor. It's got a 1.54 coefficient. So when DECA binds the androgen receptor, it's supposed to be more potent. Doesn't mean more efficacious, but more potent than testosterone or any other anabolic steroid. Trends shortly behind that in the binding affinity, but it actually is still considered to be more potent, which is very confusing. We're getting off topic because we're talking about nandrolones. So the nandrolones, well, they are nandrolones, but so we've established that they have a different binding affinity than nandrolone class. And I'm going to limit the nandrolone class to nandrolone and trenbolone, with nandrolone divided further into NPP and DECA, which is just the half-life is the only difference. I'm going to exclude all the weird shit, all right, because we got to keep it somewhat on target. The tren has a 70, approximately, a medium-high binding affinity for the progesterone receptor, whereas the nandrolone has a 30, a medium-low binding affinity for the progesterone receptor. So there's a theory that when between that interplay of alpha and beta progesterone, and I don't know how valid any of this information is, but what we've seen is tren is going to have more of a anti-estrogen effect, which would imply that it's more of an agonist to progesterone beta, where DECA has more of an agonist effect to the estrogen because you're more likely to gyno with nandrolone. It amplifies, it lowers the threshold you can handle estrogen. So therefore, I would assume that means that either nandrolone is a progesterone alpha agonist or a progesterone beta antagonist, or it's a progesterone beta partial agonist, but then it has a higher binding. No, it doesn't have a higher binding affinity. So it's doing something. But the point is, maybe it doesn't bind to progesterone beta as much as progesterone does.
Yeah.
So then it floats around until it binds to progesterone beta, alpha, and then inhibits progesterone beta.
Sure.
And then in the end, the Nandrolone class has modulating effects on your estrogen receptors. So this is where things start to get really exciting, right? So if we know estrogen receptor alpha, is going to be inhibitory on the growth hormone receptor, and we know estrogen receptor beta is upregulating on IGF-1 production, that would imply that Trenbolone would turn up IGF-1 through this mechanism. That Trenbolone would inhibit estrogen alpha, allowing more growth hormone response element, which then goes on to get more activated by estrogen beta to get even more IGF-1. Because we've always heard that Tren upregulates IGF-1. I've never heard a mechanism.
Sure.
This is the only thing I can come up with for a mechanism. This is just my supposition based off the data.
Of course, yeah.
Mechanistic data is an outcome data.
Sure. But how do they play into your model, if at all, then?
If you've had your nipples cut out, then you might be able to handle Nandrolone. Like gyno, if you had your breast glands cut out, you might be able to handle Nandrolone. Usually if people go up to 30 or 40 a day, they start to get gyno if they're mixing it with a test base.
Because of that interplay with the receptors you're talking about.
Yeah, that all androgens are going to upregulate collagen type 1 synthesis. Supposedly either EQ or Nandrolone are the two best for this. So it depends. Are you someone who needs an AI and needs more collagen synthesis? Maybe a baby dose of EQ would be appropriate. Are you someone who has had gyno surgery and has weak kidneys, but you need more collagen synthesis? Maybe you got painful tendons, then that's when you might use some Nandrolone. So collagen type 1 is more in tendons, collagen type 2 is more in cartilage. So if you got osteoarthritis, Nandrolone, none of this is just going to help. If you've got tendonitis, then this stuff might help. Or you could just lift better.
Well, God forbid. What about those who are using like Nandrolone only cycles then? Where does because that seems to be a point of conjecture, right? Some people say it's absolutely heinous and stupid, and then other people get like the best results of their life on it. So where does that kind of differentiation come from?
I did that for 2 years, had awesome results.
Okay. So what's the driving force behind that?
So you use Nandrolone only, there's no estrogen, so the Nandrolone can't make gyno. So I ran about 1,400 milligrams, so 200 milligrams a day of Nandrolone, and I would run 25 to 50 of Anavar and about 20 milligrams of Tren. And you're like, wait a minute, I thought it's Nandrolone only. It's like, it started as Nandrolone only. And it's like, but I needed some DHT in there. And although Anavar isn't DHT, it's a DHT derivative, you're running enough of it, it's going to have some androgen receptor binding in the non-genomic locations. So you're going to have, so if I pull back on the Anavar, then I'd get gyno. So the Anavar was almost like an anti-estrogen because there is a DHT receptor on the breast gland. So having some DHT will work to balance out the estrogen receptor. So my estrogen was like a 6. And my IGF-1 was a 176. So that's the flaw with the Nandrolone only cycle is you'll have no estrogen, so you'll have no GH to IGF-1 conversion.
So when people do get great results, then is that just because naturally they have very high IGF-1 anyway, or something like that, or what do you think explains the discrepancy between the results?
So let's talk about so IGF-1 is going to have a different method of muscle protein synthesis than the androgen receptor. Of course, the androgen receptor is going to upregulate IGF-1. IGF-1 is going to upregulate the androgen receptor. They're interplay, but mostly the androgen receptor is going to have muscle protein synthesis at the muscle cell. IGF-1 and estrogen receptor alpha, the feminizing one, which is, I said it's loose, binds to satellite cells and upregulates satellite cell migration. Right? But there's
which is a core part of hypertrophy.
But so does MGF, mechanogrowth factor. And mechanogrowth factor can be stimulated by super low reps and super heavy weight. So then if you don't have any estrogen in your body, you don't have any IGF-1 in your body, but you're lifting Dorian style, or powerlifting, you will recruit the satellite cells. So you get around that.
Sure.
So if you pair the Nandrolone only cycle with harder, closer to failure, low rep training, you're going to get a little bit more of the satellite cell migration than if you didn't. So you can make up for it with the training style.
Sure. I've never heard that explanation mechanism there of different training styles stimulating IGF or MGF differently. Where does that, do you know?
The mechanical tension is what drives MGF.
Okay.
And it's an autocrine, not endocrine.
Sure.
So it isn't produced elsewhere in the body and then translocates to the muscle through the bloodstream, which is what endocrine means.
Yeah.
Autocrine is the same cell, and then paracrine is adjacent cells.
Yes.
So maybe this is more like a paracrine than an autocrine, but the idea is the tension in the heavier, the high tension, the high threshold motor units, the 2X fibers, that mechanical tension is what's supposed to generate the MGF.
Sure. So does that actually open the door then to different drug cycles suiting different types of lifting, potentially?
I think so, but I'm not saying that there is a better way than that way. In other words, I'm not saying that if you have a high estrogen and a high IGF-1, you don't need to lift right.
No, I get that.
There's just
different mechanisms.
I'm just saying that you can make up for not having estrogen alpha binding and the IGF-1 through MGF.
Dave Tate here from Elite FTS to talk to you about bands. We've been a supplier of bands for almost 2 decades now. So I've known my way around the band landscape. When I'm talking about bands, I'm talking about floss bands, long bands, short bands, bands you can use for resistance training, mobility training, body weight training, and flossing. One of our most popular bands, or actually our most popular bands, are the long bands. The long bands are typically used the most with squats, bench presses. Our floss bands are bands that you wrap around the joint to be able to help with mobility, circulation. And the short bands are designed for shorter range movements, bench press, deadlifts, and a lot of times people will use them with resistance machines to help accommodate the strength resistance curve. Head over to elitefts.com and look for bands in the toolbar or blowout menu.
Because that's driven by training alone.
Sure. But if let's say we talk in generalities, we have MGF that is maybe stimulated by a slightly different training style to IGF. Well, the training style that optimizes MGF is different to IGF. Would that be fair to say?
Maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Would that then create a theory where having a varying training style where you do some heavier, more high tension lifting on top of, should we say, more traditional bodybuilding style lifting, in theory maximizes pathways better?
Right, but then if we're training like that, how long before the joints go? Well, we're using Nandrolone, so we're going to have stronger tendons.
Yeah.
All right, so if you're the type of person who takes tendon damage, it's no harm, no foul. If you're the type of person who gets joint capsule damage, then you're going to get osteoarthritis a lot faster.
Sure.
So, and then there's also recovery and CNS recovery, and then there's also the volume of sets is the amount of hypertrophic signal, and then there's the frequency. So if we're training super hard and heavy, we can't be hitting that same muscle every 40 hours unless we're only using 1 or 2 sets.
Yeah.
So it ends up volume equating by the end of the week anyway.
Yeah, sure. I'm just trying to make sense, when we have some decent studies on, people who vary rep ranges seem to get slightly better results than people who train in singular rep ranges, when they do. And what is the real mechanism there going on, other than maybe they train harder because their program's more varied, which probably comes into it, I'm sure.
So they're stale. Like you get stale after a while. You're not getting the same pump. Why? Why are you not getting the same pump? Is it that the body has resisted to that training stimulus? Is it because you worked up the pyramid so high that you're using too much weight and you're now not training optimally, your form's starting to slip, so you're transferring mechanical tension off of the target muscle onto adjacent muscles, not so much that your form is visibly different from the outside, but you don't feel it as good in the target tissue, neither mind-muscle connection nor pump, and that you could, instead of switching exercises when it's stale, simply decrease the load, but that's going to drive the rep range up. So I think that's all it is.
Okay.
So it's a periodization of the actual rep ranges. As you're doing 8 to 10 for a couple months, then you switch to 12 to 15, then you switch to 6 to 10, then you switch to 15 to 20, that you're going to have a totally different stimulus.
Sure. With all of these drugs that we've talked about, and we've covered most of them at this point, you've always mentioned daily dose throughout.
Always.
So what is the premise behind that? Because, you know, some people will hear and understand about how daily CRT dosing is more effective or whatever. And though even when we're talking about these other drugs that maybe have longer half-lives, you're still talking about daily doses. What is the kind of mechanism or theory behind that being optimal as opposed to once a week or twice a week?
So this is like an organic thing. If you're doing your GH every day, why wouldn't you just load the needle up with the rest of your gear?
Okay.
You know, and that's one. 2, all the people I know who do 2 shots a week forget.
Yep.
3, by using a hypodermic syringe where everything's a half a cc, you're talking about 100 milligram jumps at a time. That's shit. That's way too big of a jump. And then 4, you want to keep the amplitude on the graph. Like if you go to steroidplotter.com and plot your cycle, put in a short actor like Prop daily, and then switch it to SIP and see how smooth that curve looks. If that slope imagine a bed, and the shape of the slope is the bed.
Yeah.
Would you want to lay on that?
Yeah.
If the answer is no, then don't put it in your veins.
Sure. So it's in this role then is that going to be the same though, regardless of the ester? So like say you get something like testacanoate, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but you get my point, like a really long ester.
Yeah, I don't think it matters after 8 carbons.
Okay, so after that point.
Yeah, after 8 carbons, it doesn't matter. But that's also why I like MCT oil, is that the MCT oil matches the half-life with the dosing frequency.
Okay.
So with MCT oil, it's going to be more optimal for daily dosing.
As opposed to what's
grapeseed oil. Or one of the other ones.
Just because they get broken down at different rates.
I think grapeseed oil is used with anaphthate because it's a 7-day half-life because it's 7 carbons.
Sure.
And I think there's cottonseed oil or something is what's used with cypionate because it's 8. So, yeah, like if you know someone who does chemistry and they make gear for you, then I would suggest you have them make yours with MCT oil so that you could have it and you do daily injections because that's optimal.
Sure. Okay. So there's a lot. It's primarily logistic, though. Would you be fair? It's fair to say that.
Well, it depends. Like going from anaphthate to SIP, that's not a big difference. It's still better to go SIP, but it's not a big difference. Doing every other day versus every day, that's a big difference.
Sure.
Yeah, especially if it's anaphthate. Doing daily Prop, huge difference in daily SIP. So I just long acting, no short esters every single day. Yeah. And people hate it. They 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 hate it. But when they fucking do it, they're like, oh, this is amazing. Yeah. All my problems went away.
And you say problem, we're talking like side effect reduction, all this type of thing as well.
Blood pressure, acne, gyno.
Sure.
Almost every side effect is generated by the amplitude. And the reason why is when there's a huge spike, the body upregulates aromatase and 5-alpha reductase to clear some of that increased drug amount.
Sure.
So then you're getting the byproducts that are where the side effects come from. Whereas if there's no change, the body doesn't notice.
Sure.
It's like a frog in a pot.
Yep.
You just turn it up and let it sit there and you'll boil it. It doesn't even know something's wrong.
Sure. Okay, cool. So this might be a huge rabbit hole to go down. I'm sorry if it is, but so all of this stuff we've talked about with the girlfriend analogies, which are fantastic, by the way, how does all of this change?
Ex-girlfriend.
Ex-girlfriend. How does all of this change if we go to the female side of the sport?
My female model's really simple. And what I love is no one gives me shit. The girls are like, thanks.
Okay.
You're like, that's you don't get any fucking vitriol. They just are glad someone gives a fuck about them for once.
Okay.
Like these HRT clinics, they're such fucking assholes because they're prescribing 10 milligrams every 3 to 4 days. That's ridiculous. That's 20 milligrams a week. And now I'm sure you can check their blood work, and if their total test comes back under 100 and their total DHT comes back under 18, maybe that works for them. But chicks have enough mood swings as it is. You don't inject mood swings into them. So daily administration of a 0.5 milligram, maybe a milligram if they need it, should be plenty.
Sure.
Like, I don't want to drop names, but let's say the goal is to be a healthy female, an attractive, healthy female. For wherever she's at in her life, she wants to return to the best she ever was before, or maybe even better, with health, emotional balance, mood, mental health, physical health, whatever, attractiveness. A 0.5 milligram to 1 milligram a day a test should be enough. You can follow that up with estrogen if necessary, or progesterone if necessary. That's obviously beyond the scope of most gynecologists. I don't know anyone, endocrinology, reproductive endocrinologists, gynecologists, nobody's doing this shit. Nobody's doing female HRT. They just won't do it. And then most of the HRT clinics won't even touch girls. So
is that just a fear thing, or they just feel they don't know the
at least they have enough ethics to say, I don't know what I'm doing.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. I'm the only guy I know who's like, all right, let's get this. Let's do this shit. Let's fix this.
Sure.
You know, and that's pretty much it. Is 0.5 milligram is all they really need. Now, let's say they want to use Anavar.
Yeah. So I'm saying, how does that change then if the goals become physique enhancement and things like that?
I've seen ridiculously good results with 2 units of GH and 1 milligram of Anavar pre-training.
1 milligram.
1 milligram sublingually pre-training. Assuming you train like a bad motherfucker. Like you're squatting 315. Like you're training so hard that no dude in the gym can keep up with you. 1 milligram will do it.
Wow.
If you're doing hack squats with 25s on each side, get the fuck out of here. No, you got to be doing like 4 or 5 plates on the hack squat as a girl. 1 milligram free training should be a fuck ton.
Yeah.
And it's not going to, and then there's an app I got from John Jewett that you got on your phone. I don't know, what's it called? Voice? I can look it up later, but there's Voice something. It's like a purple thing with a male-female symbol in it. And you can talk into it and it's going to give you a hertz. That you do that before you start your cycle of Anavar. And then while you're on cycle, test it. And if it starts going down, stop.
Yeah.
Don't wait till your voice cracks like you're 13 and going through puberty.
Sure.
Because this is going to hurt a lot of feelings, but I got to say it. The masculinization to the clitoris and the face, the hair growth, those aren't good. But they're nowhere near as bad as when your voice goes. Dudes, I mean, me and almost every guy I know likes a woman to sound like a woman. And I have to ask women, ask yourselves, would you like a guy with a girl's voice? No. So therefore, we want a woman with a woman's voice. And that's not me trying to be controlling. That's not me trying to be sexist. I'm just trying to protect you from having your ambitions get ahead of your judgment or, yeah. Sure. I like, consider me like an extra dad. Like I'm just trying to protect you from yourself or from a shitty coach or from a pushy boyfriend.
So in if you're getting good results with like 1 milligram of Anavar, what will that be, like 4 days a week or something like that? If it's pre-training, what explains then the use of like 25, 50 milligrams a day, Primo and EQ being used and then obviously testosterone being used at higher dosages and things like that? Why are women not getting the results they want from those lower dosages and then jumping up there? Is it just bad coaching?
I don't think they even start there.
Okay, sure.
Like in Michigan, it's normal for girls to do like 300 milligrams of Tren a week.
Okay.
That girls just blast drugs like fucking crazy because they think it's fat loss drugs. And then they like, I'm going to take more drugs.
Sure.
Like I find that girls are very cautious when it comes to training, how much weight they use. They won't use more weight than they need to, but boy, do they go crazy with drugs. Guys are more cautious with drugs.
Interesting.
Because they're more self-educated. Girls just take it.
Sure.
And then they're emotionally compulsed, like, oh, I just had spinach queso dip and margaritas. I'll take 2 extra Anavar and I'll cancel out. And they think it's a diet drug. Yeah. When I started doing this coaching shit, they thought that tamoxifen was a diet drug. It helps you burn fat. I'm like, yeah, from your tits. It's like, it binds to the breast tissue and makes you melt fat from your boobs. That's what it does. It's an anti-estrogen. It binds to the breast wrist and like, well, I'm going to get implants anyway. I was like, let me ask you something. If your dude was going to cut his dick off and put an inner tube in the skin, how'd you feel about that? And they'd be like, I wouldn't like it. And then be like, okay, so don't just get rid of your boobs and replace them with a bag of water.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the mindset you talked about earlier of like doing something to rectify making a bad choice drug-wise in the first place. Like, why do it? That's it. So when you have, I presume you worked with women who have kind of gone down that rabbit hole and have, should we say, issues that they're dealing with. Are there ways of pulling themselves back once these things have set in?
And that's the part that's the worst, is girls don't understand virilization is permanent.
Yeah.
Guys, I can fix a dude. I can't fix a girl that turned him into a dude.
Sure.
If you're taking more drugs than trans people, there's nothing we can do. You're going to turn into a dude. So like the average bikini competitor uses more androgens than the trans people.
Yeah. So what do you think is going to happen?
They're going to turn into a dude.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting that you in your experience, they're so kind of whimsical with the use because like the side effects of them are so much more pronounced and, as you said, basically irreversible in some cases. And you'd assume that would come along with a more cautious mentality, but you've experienced the reverse.
You ready for this? If we didn't get demonetized, we're going to get demonetized right now. That they have less touch with reality. That reality is more malleable to them. That if they believe it hard enough, they think that it's true. And if they scream and yell and push and shove, they get louder and louder, then reality is supposed to bend to their will, which is a great attitude towards something like motivation. Like if I'm going to exert my will on my training and I'm going to visualize success, I'm going to visualize winning. That's true. But you can't visualize surviving abusing drugs.
Yeah.
But you can't visualize the drugs not turning you into a dude. Or they believe that if something goes wrong, there's some guy they can turn to fix it.
Sure.
And this is going to come off super sexist. You can cut this if you want, but I find that a lot of women are used to turning to their dad or a husband or something, and if they fuck up, he's going to fix it. And there's nothing we can do that can fix it if your voice gets low, or if you get a chin that's cleft, or if you've got a clit that's an inch long. We can't fix it no matter what we want to, no matter how much we want to help you. There is no fixing it. It's permanent.
True.
And some people might say, well, guys are like that too. Maybe they are. And maybe I've got some issues. But it doesn't matter. You know, what my personal experience and my theories about why they do what they do doesn't matter. My experience is this is what they do.
Yeah.
And this is the damage they do to themselves.
True.
And no one can fix it. Dexter Jackson can downsize and fit into a normal suit and fit into a normal airplane. But like Iris Kyle can't go back.
Yeah.
She's going to be Iris Kyle forever. You know, you can't revert.
Sure.
And it's sad. And I hate that I can't have this conversation without being politically incorrect and causing an emotional wall to go up and having them shut down and being angry at me.
Yeah.
But nobody likes hearing what they don't want to hear.
Sure.
They want validation on their beliefs. And this is not something you can validate. You can't validate it. That's why I've never worked with any girl and put her on a aromatase inhibitor or a estrogen blocker, or because it's breast cancer meds. The fuck am I giving you breast cancer meds for? You don't like your boobs? You know, like, why would you want to take breast cancer meds? And then I'm like, no girl wins a pretty girl contest by taking male hormones. So it's like, I'm an advocate of the bikini division. I'm cool with the wellness division. I find that it starts to become dicey with the figuring up because the girls are using drugs that change their gender. And it's not a moral thing. It's not an ethics thing. If a girl insists that she's going to do it, then she's going to do it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I have to do it.
Sure.
You know, you can go somewhere else. I could be your doctor and keep you safe. And if someone came to me and said, I want you to be my coach, I understand you don't agree, I have to use these drugs to win, I'll probably do it. But, you know, I would always be trying to get her to use the least amount of drugs possible.
Of course. Yeah.
Not that I don't do that with the men too, but some guys are kind of bulletproof.
True.
If we've got a history of bulletproof organs, then it's like, okay, that's reasonable. I don't think any girls are bulletproof against being virilized.
Yeah. And regardless of like your opinions or whatever people may think about those, in your experience, like going above, say, 5 to 10 milligrams of testosterone a week and, you know, what ends up being 5 milligrams of Anavar a week should be enough to get most women to the physique and probably level of strength that they want.
So do you remember Danny Reardon? Okay. So Danny Reardon got third in Olympia. Her dose was super low. I mean, she might be pissed at me for saying this, but she told me what her dose was. I think it was on our podcast, The Weekly Grind, about 8 years ago. So I think she was open about it. I don't think it was private. It was 5 milligrams of Anavar, pre-training for 6 weeks at a time. That's it. She got third in the Olympia. But she probably trained hard as fuck. And she had the genes to be a champion.
Sure.
And she had the discipline to be a champion. And does that mean that's the maximum any woman could ever get away with? Oh, maybe not. Maybe other women can get away with more. But DJ Madsen, a friend of mine, she said that she found a study that there was 2 milligrams every day for 20 weeks caused more virilization than 5 milligrams a day for 6 weeks.
Sure.
I was like, okay, but was the 2 milligrams oral or was it sublingual? And it was oral.
Yeah.
So if it was 1 or 2 milligrams sublingual, more of it should go to the muscles, less of it should go towards the clitoris or the hair follicles or the larynx. So it should be less deleterious if you do it sublingual. And, you know, again, I feel bad that I probably hurt someone's feelings because I said something they didn't want to hear, and I'm not saying in the most sensitive way possible. And that's not intentional. I'm not intentionally trying to hurt anybody, but it is a very controversial subject, and it sucks that you can either tell the truth and fulfill your ethical guideline is to protect people, or you can be politically correct and be popular and be everyone's friend.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying what you're watching, make sure to take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe.
Sure. Well, we spoke at the beginning, right, about how we should be able to have differing opinions anyway and be able to like
he's a physician, so there is an ethical guideline. There's an oath there.
I have to tell the truth.
Yeah, for sure. I got one more on the list then, just because I'm sure this one is probably triggering. So things like Clen and T3, you know, if everyone's getting all of this other stuff wrong, you know, Nandrolone, Primo, like how bad are people fucking that stuff up?
It's not that bad.
Okay, so that's an interesting.
I mean, girls who take 50 T3 are taking too much T3. Girls who are taking 200 Clen are taking too much Clen. So I think the safe.
And I mean in general here, not women specific.
Right. So like, I think the HRT dosage of T3 approximately is 25 micrograms. But as usual, everyone wants me to give them a dose. And I'm like, we're not looking for a dose. We're looking for a result. So we want about a 3.3 to a 4 on blood work. Means your T3 is good. That's what we want. So we use as much as that takes.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah, like Max McGillicuddy, 20 milligrams of test might get him to 1,500. I need 70 test a day to get me to 1,500. You know, I'm using 100 milligrams of test a day right now, and I had a 19 estradiol. Whereas in the past, if I used 60 milligrams, I'd have an 80. I just have a lower body fat right now. So I have less aromatase in my body. So I'm not converting. So I have to use more test, which is going to cause more DHT, which is going to cause more hair loss. So I'm kind of in a fuck situation, which is why putting on fat post-show actually is beneficial for anabolic effect. I didn't get fat enough. Or my mini cut post rebound was too efficient. Whatever the case, it's like at this point, well, we're going back to topic. So the Clen thing, let me finish with T3. So you have to backfill with T4 if you're going to use just T3, because if the T3 is in balance with the T4, we're going to activate the DI3 pathway, which is going to be catabolic. But in order to stay anabolic, we have to do the T4 to match the T3. So you want a T4 over a 1.1. We want a T3 over a 3.3 to up to a 4. Some caveats. T4 absorbs like shit. So I like liquid T3. T4. There's a sublingual form of T4. It's like $300 fucking bucks a month. But liquid T4 works better. And then the T3, it's got a weird half-life.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a 3.5 to 7 day half-life or something like that, but there's a huge spike. So you really can't do all your dose at once. You really do have to break it up, but you don't want to be taking T3 right before bed.
Mm-hmm.
So if, for instance, I was doing 12 milligrams, and that's what I need personally, I need like 100 T4 and 12 T3 to get where I want to be, 3.3 T3 and a cut, then I got to use a 6 in the morning, and then 6 about 8 hours later. If I go too far after that, I won't sleep.
Sure.
So that's the T3. If you're using more than 37 milligrams of T3, something's wrong.
Sure.
Because if I took all 12 in the morning, I'm shooting up to like 8, 9 an hour later. And then I'm going to be about 24 hours later. That means I take the average. So 9 plus 3 divided by 2, I'm averaging 6. 6 is too fucking high. You're probably going to lose muscle. We want an average of about 3, 4 tops.
Sure.
Which means we can shoot up to 6, and then 6 plus 2, 8. Yeah, basically 6 and 2 is even too much amplitude there.
Yeah.
So you'd want to cut it down. So you want to go up to 5, come down to 3, go up to 5, come down to 3. That's pretty much what we want to be doing because there's no way to make it steady.
Sure.
They don't have that is the Cytomel is the long acting T3.
Yeah.
And it's still shit. So that's the thing with the thyroid hormone is you want to balance your thyroid hormone so you have normal thyroid functioning. More thyroid isn't necessarily good in either off season or pre-contest.
No.
It's a double-edged sword in both situations. Off season, you can build more muscle because all your cells are turning over faster, so the maximum rate of muscle growth is faster, but you're going to need more food. So if the limiting factor is how much you can eat, the thyroid hormone is going to be the flaw. If you could eat more, then I guess you could take some T3 a little bit to speed up your metabolism so you could even lay down more muscle faster. People are going to hear this. They're not going to do the appropriate blood work. They're going to fuck themselves up. So this is one of those things where I want to tell the truth, but the truth is dangerous in the wrong hands.
Yeah.
Just like with last time. So that's why I'm putting in these caveats. Like this is dangerous in the wrong hands. You got to do it right. And we don't have enough time for me to go into every detail on how to make everything perfect. But when we look at the contest prep, if the T3 is too high, yeah, you're going to burn fat faster, but you're also going to burn muscle. And that's not going to help you look better on stage.
Of course. So in many scenarios, do you think the high T3 is just people just making up for lack of adherence to the diet and not enough cardio work and all that typical stuff?
Sometimes you could be perfect on your diet, perfect on your training, and you're listening to your coach and you're just not going to make the show. Either you got too fat in the off season, or your body just doesn't want to respond, or you have too much stress, or you're not sleeping right, or your ex-girlfriend just got out of prison and one of her dimensional clones swapped out with her and she ate your bunny. You know, like you don't know what the fuck's going to happen.
Sure.
So it's not always their fault if they don't make the show. But turning up the T3 to make the show is you're not a good thing. Because you're going to lose a year or two's worth of muscle growth to get maybe 2% leaner, but be stringy and look flat.
Yeah.
Not worth it.
Sure.
Either don't show up or come in a little soft.
Yeah.
And just be full as a house.
Can the catabolic effects on muscle tissue really be that pronounced when overdoing it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Because I think if people actually understood, like you said, a year or two, maybe that's an exaggeration, maybe it's not, but if people understood that, they would probably think twice before ramping that dosage up, I'm sure.
I only put on maybe 1 or 2 pounds a year.
Yeah.
So if I lose 2 pounds of muscle, then that's going to take me a year to get back to where I was in the middle of prep. You know, it's just not worth it. No one show's worth it.
No, for sure. Cool. I mean, you mentioned at the beginning, kind of early on, about how all these peptides are new and you're not going to touch them for 10 years and all that type of stuff. Do any of them to you represent any kind of like potentially promising applications?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, but it's just a case of ethically, you don't.
No. It's not even ethically. It's just covering. I don't want to die, and I don't want to get uglier.
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose shows worse. So it's like a lot can go wrong. My life's good enough that I don't want to just throw random shit at the wall and see what sticks. So when we address the cleanse thing, so with
Oh,
cleanse,
of course. Sorry. Yeah.
I think that supposedly there's the magical safe dose of 80. I've ran 200, no problem. I start losing sleep at 160.
True.
Tren, I start losing sleep at 5 milligrams
Per
a
day.
day.
Yeah.
I ran as much as 200, but I start losing sleep at 5.
Wow.
So I can get away with 4. So 4 would be the dose I'd start with this contest prep and see if I get any sleep. Same thing with climb. I can ramp up to like 160. Everything goes to shit. 100, and it's a lot of diminishing returns.
True.
As the dose goes up, each increment is less valuable than the previous increment, and each increment has more consequences than the previous increment.
Yeah.
So the clen, if people want a starting point, I would say, start with 20 milligrams of clen, and then if your thyroid, you go get your blood work done and your thyroid's low, you have to then titrate up. And it takes so long to titrate up and get your blood work, and you have to count on somebody to do their job, which is a big if. That you might miss the show just because it took you so long to catch on. So if you know for sure your thyroid's going to go to shit, what a lot of people do is they start with 50 T4 and 12.5 T3. And then that's a good buffer. That should help a lot.
Yeah.
And then you can start doing serial blood work. Like I would go during prep and get my thyroid done every week.
Yeah.
And I get results back in a day, but I'm the one ordering it. And other people can't do what I do, right? I order my own blood work. I go in and get it tested. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a tweak here, tweak there. Next week, okay, tweak here, tweak there. And I'll fine tune shit that way. Estrogen, IGF-1, T4, T3, I test every week.
Yeah.
Just to make sure I can maximize everything. And then peptides. All right. So top tier peptide, growth hormone.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Type A tier peptide, insulin if you need it, not if you don't.
How does someone determine the if there?
Get a continuous glucose monitor.
Sure. Okay.
That's the best way to do it. Their Stello is the brand. Dexcom, I think, is the manufacturer. Slap that fucker on, and you've got it on your phone. It tells you exactly what your blood sugar is.
Sure.
And you just follow the directions, and you know whether or not you're diabetic or not, basically, based on that. And you can modulate shit. And it's a little bit more complicated than that. I can't really, I mean, I could, but that's a whole nother.
Yeah, of course.
We'd have to go through example by example.
No, I understand that.
And then, but for the most part, that's the best thing is like, hey, if they're like, hey, you're 100% in the zone, you never get below 70, you're never over 180 postprandial. You're always back to like 100 or 70 2 hours after you eat, you probably don't need any insulin.
Sure.
If you get your fasting insulin blood work done, it comes back higher than 5, then you're starting to get insulin resistant. If you're in a prep, you shouldn't be insulin resistant. So like there's things like that. It's just, that's a whole nother thing. It's more complicated than managing diabetes. It's managing blood sugar in a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
So then we get to another tier system almost, which is healing. So the healing peptides, BPC 157, TB 500, or thymosin beta 4, they're fucking awesome. How you use them and in what combination depends. I came up with a formula, I want to say 11 years ago. I did a video on this stuff, and it was BPC 157 with TB 500 with growth hormone with Anavar.
Yep.
For girls. With men, you could get by with testosterone and either DECA or EQ.
Yep.
And you're going to get the collagen synthesis. You're going to get the growth hormone, which converts to IGF-1. You're going to have the anti-inflammatory effects of the TB500 and the angiogenesis and the wound repair. And then with the BPC 157, you're going to get the angiogenesis.
Okay.
So it covers your bases, and they work on different mechanisms.
True. So that would be like a performance and health / longevity kind of stuff?
No, that's I just tore some shit.
Okay, so
Stack,
that's like an immediate healing.
Yeah, like I was watching Logan with my stepdaughter, and it was like, and she loves that movie. So we'd watch it over and over and over again. And she's like, what's that shit he's injecting? And I was like, that's BPC and TB500. So that she didn't think it was steroids. So it's like, yeah, that's what it is. So he's like, it's like, and like you heal as soon as he injected it, right? Because in the premise that they refined his DNA, made the formula, and then he lost his healing power because from a previous movie, The Wolverine, he had it taken out by the Silver Samurai to give the Silver Samurai that healing factor. But so what we had here is Logan's injecting the formula to get regeneration. And so BPC and TB500 is fucking incredible as a combination. Now, Brett Wilkin has a topical version called Butcher Balm, which is what I usually recommend to people first, unless it's a really deep injury. I usually want them using Butcher Bomb first, because usually it's just their elbows and their knees, and it should penetrate enough.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're going to say, oh, but the molecule is too big to pass through the pores. I'm like, yeah, but that's what the other cofactors are supposed to be, like the menthol. And there's probably DMSO in there that actually drive it through the skin into the tissue. That's the healing peptides. MT2.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. That is a controversial one. This is going to piss some people off. All right. So MT2, I love that stuff because it was developed by the University of Arizona to protect the people who are from basically Caucasian people from sunlight. So that you don't get skin cancer. That the skin cancer incidence in Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona, was highest in the world because of transplants from the East Coast. So they developed this drug you can inject that's supposed to make your melanocytes stimulate more melanin. The melanin reflects the UVB beams, which are the most cancerous. Also, I think normally the UVA beams stimulate melanin production, but also it damages the tissue. If the ultraviolet radiation breaks double bonds, the DNA gets a break in it from the UVB beams, and then there's repair element that comes along. And sometimes there's a thiamine, it's a TT mismatch repair. And that's what stimulates melanoma. So to protect yourself from melanoma, you can use MT2. Now, this is the best part. The dermatologists, American College of Dermatology, has dermatologists telling people, we don't endorse this because it causes cancer. There is no fucking evidence of that whatsoever. There's been 6 case studies, mostly people since in Australia around 2012, where people were loading on the drug and tanning in tanning beds, and they had skin cancer. So this is why it's a bad faith. I don't think each individual dermatologist is evil, but this is how stupid this is. Their concern is that by stimulating the melanocytes, you will get melanoma, which is the melanocytes proliferating. That basically they're carcinogens, and it's going to cause the melanocyte to turn into a neoplastic cell, and the neoplastic cell is going to replicate. It's not stimulating the mitosis. It's stimulating it to secrete melanin. So that doesn't make any sense. Furthermore, the melanin is going to protect you from sunlight, which is going to decrease the chance of you getting the normal old-fashioned form of melanoma. And there is a lower incidence rate amongst people who tan and use MT2 than people who tan who don't use MT2. So it has a lower or negative relative risk, not a greater relative risk. If anyone tried, even a little bit, they would have figured this out. It took me, I think, about an hour. So this is what is even more fun. So they did some direct studies on it to see, does it really cause cancer? It's the opposite. It actually, there's other mechanisms that occur at a biochemical level inside the cell where it fights against the development of melanoma because they give it to people who have melanoma, and it slows the growth of the melanoma. So it's actually an effective modality to use in conjunction with existing chemotherapy to slow the growth of the melanoma while the other drugs kill the melanoma.
Wow.
So, but here's what I think is going on. People are like, oh, here comes a tinfoil head with his tinfoil windows. They don't make any money if you're healthy. It's not like there's people in Europe doing it. No, melanotan's legal in all other countries. It's only the United States that's illegal because this is the only for-profit medical system. In med school, there's like this joke that everyone wants either dermatology or radiology because you don't have to do shit. It's the easiest fucking job. So it's like with dermatology, all their money comes from these Moore's procedures. Basically, it's, I did it to my wife. Like, we're not married anymore, and that's not the reason. But she had a mole that looked weird, so I cut it out, put in 2 stitches, threw it in the trash. Done. That's $1,700 fucking dollars. in 2010. It's $4,000 now.
Wow.
They call it a Moore's procedure. I'm like, that's not a procedure. You draw an oval with a scalpel and then you pull it out with tweezers and you put 2 stitches on.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, that's different. It might have clean margins. It's like, well, it had clean margins. I know it had clean margins.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can run a blood test and you will find nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but it's like you're not doing it. Like, well, we've got to freeze it and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no. You're driving the bill up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like putting onion straws on your steak and cheese and sour cream on your potato and not telling you it costs more money.
Mm-hmm.
It's bullshit. And so they drive up the price and they make so much money off of, they terrify, it's called sandwich sales. You create a pain point, like you're going to die. And like, oh my God, what do I do? It's like, well, I could cure you of cancer. Well, please, doctor, please cure me of cancer. It's like, it's only going to cost you $2,000. It's like, take my money, take it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, the only reason why you think you got cancer is this greedy motherfucker told you you had cancer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the same oldest trick in the book. So they sell you on the idea that you have a tumor, and then they cut the tumor out,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's a mole.
Yeah, sure.
I'll give you an example. I had an ex-girlfriend. This one was a Masteron. She was not a Primo. She was not a Halo. All right, so she was worried she had skin cancer. So we go to this dermatologist, and I'm like, don't tell him the doctor. Don't tell him the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see him pull his shit. So we go, he's got some moles, cuts the moles off. We go home. She gets a bill for $1,700 that they had to do a panel to determine through oncology whether or not it was actually a cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And they found that it was a dysplastic nevus.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, well, I sat in on this one. I was like, a dysplastic nevus. And he's like, yeah. I was like, so an ugly mole. And he was like, yeah, I speak Latin.
Mm-hmm.
Or Greek or whatever the thing it was. It's dysplastic. It's badly, plastic formed,
Mm-hmm.
nevus mole. It's badly formed mole.
Mm-hmm.
So you told her she got cancer. So you could scare her into letting you do this expensive procedure. You cut holes all over her fucking body at 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're charging her $1,700 fucking dollars because it was a mole.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if you fucked up, who are you to charge?
Mm-hmm.
I can understand if you cured her of cancer, you could charge her money.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to charge this girl who's a waitress at Leo Coney Island fucking $1,700 because you fucked up and misdiagnosed her, and then you're going to throw a fancy word at her so that she thinks you did something special? And Dave can see I'm shaking as I talk about it.
What's up?
And I wish I was... that's how rude I am in person.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, that's why it makes me hate them.
Yeah.
It makes me
understand them for sure.
So you have videos on all this stuff on your YouTube, right?
Yeah, like the Melanotan 2 video is on there.
Mm-hmm.
The BPC 157's on there. Awesome. I think they've got videos for everything on there.
Is that the best way people can find you?
Instagram. So it's at Todd Lee MD.
Mm-hmm.
The YouTube channel is a mouthful. It's Dr. Todd Lee's Anabolic University.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Twitter, I think, is at Todd Lee MD. They're called X now. The TikTok, I think, is at Todd Lee MD. I think the Spotify is called Anabolic University.
Mm-hmm.
Someone fucked up on that one. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I'm everywhere, but the best way to get me is Instagram.
Okay.
I check my Instagram messages, I would say 10 to 15 times a day.
Oh, that's good. So you're responsive.
Yeah, and I respond to the comments, and people don't realize you're going to respond to the comments, so they'll talk shit about you in the comments section. Motherfucker, I'm right here. It's like, what are you talking about being third person for? Talk directly to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you for coming out again.
Oh, of course, man.
It's been great, and we're done.
Cool.
Thank you.
All content you see on this channel and at elitefts.com is created by, take a guess, Elite FTS. If you want to help support the content, head over to elitefts.com and pick up literally anything that you need to be able to get more jacked and strong.